Hello and welcome to One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. Day 3 from Radio Row here in Las Vegas for Super Bowl 58. The game is just 2 days away, but we have one more day with the live show here at Radio Row. Day 3, I'm Brian Raybacks, joined with Julia Moss and Bridge Gotham. Guys, it's crazy to think that this week has flown by, but we're on day 3 now, and still another day to get into it. How are we feeling now that we're fully in the swing of things?
Well, I feel a lot better today, I think mainly because we got to sleep a lot more. I think that was huge for all of us. We've been waking up at 5 a.m. each day for the Chiefs media availability. And
for a good cause, though.
There was nothing more worth it. There's not a lot of things that'll get me up at 5 a.m., but an experience like that every day of the week will get me awake. But today we got to sleep in a little more, get up, get going, and now we're back here, and I'm so excited. It's bittersweet because it's the last day we're going to be having a lot of interviews, but this whole experience has been really amazing.
Yeah, it's been awesome, and waking up early, it's hard to know kind of what time zone you're really in, because when you're waking up at 5, it's really 8 in New York, and we started doing that right away. But it's just been such a whirlwind in the best way possible, and as we kind of turn the page to day 3, we're done with all the team and media availability. So today is really just going to be hanging out here at Radio Row for a little bit longer, get to meet some more people, get to get some more interviews, and get to talk about the game, which, again, as you said, Brian, only 2 days away.
Yeah, we'll be live on YouTube today from 2 to 5 p.m. on the East Coast. And there's just been so much that's been happening this whole week, whether it be the Chiefs, their media, the 49ers speaking to us, and even last night, the NFL honors, the awards ceremony where players get the awards for this season, everything from MVP, Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, a couple big awards, Lamar Jackson, a 2-time MVP, and we kind of touched a lot on this tonight. Are we not surprised that Lamar won the award, but Dak Prescott second, and Christian McCaffrey, Brock Purdy don't come away with the award, but I feel like we're all pretty certain that Lamar was going to win this.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson certainly had the statistical accolades to win the award this year. I think he's a really great player. I think obviously doesn't have what it takes to win the big game, as we've seen, losing in the postseason every time he's gotten there. It's been really hard to watch because the Ravens, to me, had all the pieces to go win a Super Bowl this year. And I know it's a regular season award, but you see the Ravens were home favorites in the AFC Championship game. They had a home game, as we mentioned in earlier shows. You had a Mahomes that's going on the road for the first time in his career. He went at Buffalo, then at Baltimore. And, very frustrating to lose that game when that was probably going to be your best chance to get to a Super Bowl. Would have been a nice little rematch with the Niners from the Harbaugh Bowl all those years ago in Super Bowl 47. So it's really funny. Could have got that rematch, but we do have another rematch. So many different storylines in the Super Bowl. But, yeah, I think Lamar, MVP, makes sense. But it is funny at this point when you crown the MVP right before the Super Bowl, when he's not playing in the Super Bowl, you're like, yes, he's the most valuable player, but, can't win the big one.
I think what's more surprising to me as we talk about Lamar Jackson, nearly a unanimous MVP, got 49 of the 50 first-place votes, but where that other first-place vote went is a little bit surprising to me. That didn't go to Dak Prescott, didn't go to Brock Purdy, but it went to Josh Allen. So it's tough because unanimous MVP is certainly a title I'm sure Lamar Jackson would have preferred to have. And for that second-place vote, or for that the only first-place vote that didn't go to Lamar Jackson goes to someone who wasn't in the top 2, certainly might sting a little bit.
It might sting a little bit, but, I mean, Josh Allen also had a really strong season. Yep. Take away the interceptions, which is probably why he was not receiving a lot of first-place votes. But Lamar Jackson this year, I mean, when you look at it's a quarterback award, and honestly, with a tight race in the MVP this year, it was probably going to go to the best quarterback on the best team, and that was Lamar Jackson, regardless of whatever happened in the postseason. So Lamar, 2 MVPs. I mean, he's built up a pretty strong resume. He's just still looking for that extra jolt to really cement himself, that being a Super Bowl appearance or a Super Bowl ring. He still has not been able to get past the AFC title game, but he's done a great job, and he gets serenaded with another MVP award. Just a shame the Ravens couldn't topple the Chiefs despite everything.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned Josh Allen, because I think he did make a good case for the award. I know it may sound silly, but the Buffalo Bills had a horrible start to the season. I think they were 6-6 and then had to win their final 5 which, by the way, they finished 11-6. But the thing is that the Miami Dolphins for the entire season seemed like mortal locks to win the AFC East, and that when you got to that last 5-game stretch, basically everything had to go perfectly for Buffalo and everything had to go wrong for Miami, and it did, and it culminated with a Week 18 matchup, Miami versus Buffalo, where they were playing for the AFC East. And I think that's really big for Buffalo because there were a lot of question marks about Josh Allen and these Buffalo Bills. And, of course, they ultimately fell in the playoffs, but I think it did show, their ability to rally. And I think Josh Allen had a great season. Obviously, Lamar Jackson much stronger, but I do understand maybe where that voter was coming from.
So it's something about Josh Allen, too, that I think this season only, I'm not counting other seasons, but he started drawing comparisons to a quarterback that I don't think quarterbacks really want comparisons drawn to, and that's Jameis Winston. Because Jameis Winston throws a lot of touchdowns, a lot of yards, but he also throws a lot of interceptions. And Josh Allen at one point led the league in touchdowns and interceptions thrown. And it's not like he doesn't have options. He has Dalton Knox, Stephon Diggs, up and down a little bit. But for Buffalo, I think for Josh Allen in particular, like going into next season, he has the talent and the skill to be able to take a team to the Super Bowl. It's just a matter of playing well in those big games, and we haven't seen that yet so far.
I mean, if you really look at it, Josh Allen, 29 pass touchdowns, that led the league, or it was more than Lamar Jackson. 15 rushing touchdowns compared to Lamar Jackson's 5.
And that would shock you given how much Lamar Jackson relies on the ground game. Now, when you look at yards on the ground, I imagine Lamar does beat out Josh Allen. I mean, are you looking at that now, Brian?
Yeah, 821 in favor of Lamar and 524 for Josh Allen.
But still impressive for Josh Allen, given his larger frame. Lamar Jackson can kind of be more elusive the way that he moves. Josh Allen seems much more like a pocket passer. So to get 524 yards on the ground is impressive, but obviously Lamar Jackson going into the 800s, obviously clearly
almost a 1,000-yard rusher.
Not a lot of people are touching that at the quarterback position.
No.
And it's partially a shame that this was a topic of conversation that the MVP award has become a quarterback award. So when you look at somebody like Christian McCaffrey, who had the season that he had, he did not receive very many MVP votes. Now, he got Offensive Player of the Year, which we were kind of saying is like the MVP, but not for a quarterback.
Prize.
It's literally just the second best, like, hey, you're not an MVP because you're not a quarterback, but we're going to give you this anyway. So at least he comes away with something.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like the offensive. It's like, because in the NBA, it's much more obvious. Like, there's just the MVP, right? Like, in the NFL, there's Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, and then just the overall MVP, which is basically a quarterback award. And it's sad, but it kind of is what it is. I mean, I don't know how you can relabel the award to anything else than what it actually is. So you kind of just have to accept that for what it is. And I think if you're Christian McCaffrey, it's hard to be content with that. But I think, I think he was the most valuable player. I mean, you saw what he did this year. I mean, he scored a touchdown in virtually every game. And as someone who had him on my fantasy football team, I can tell you you could rely on him.
And just looking at more awards, I mean, we talked a lot about the comeback player of the year. Joe Flacco ended up taking that award. And I'm sure we'll get into all of that later on. But for now, let's detox. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more one-on-one coming up shortly. Welcome back to 101, New York's longest running sports call-in show. Brian Raybacks, Bridge Gotham. We've mentioned it's Radio Row. We're going to have interviews all day long, and we have one right now. It's Marcus Smith, former first-round pick of the Philadelphia Eagles back in 2014.
Yep.
Also spent time with Seattle and Washington in his career. Marcus, thank you so much for coming on. How are you enjoying Vegas so far?
Man, it's been busy. I will say I've been here since Sunday, and I've been doing interviews, panels. So it's been pretty busy, but it's been fun being able to see old teammates, being able to see guys that I haven't seen before, like Shannon Sharp. Shannon Sharp is like, I'm a fanboy to Shannon Sharp because that's, he's Hall of Famer. So just being able to see guys that I haven't seen before and being able to talk to them, I think is pretty cool.
What guys have you been able to see down here? Because there's a lot of people down here. It's Radio Row, Super Bowl week. Who have you been able to talk to and kind of reconnect with?
So Rodney McLeod, I just connected with him. Bilal Powell, he played with me at Louisville. I was able to connect with him. And then I also I seen Cam Newton. Well, he actually came to speak to us in Louisville when we was playing in the Belt Bowl. We was in, I think it was North Carolina. So I got the opportunity to speak. So I was really happy about that. Really try to get those gems, talk to them and see what they do, how they do it. And it's just been pretty fun to talk to them.
Yeah, you mentioned Shannon Sharp. We've seen him walking around too. I mean, look, we're as big a fan of him as I think you are. I mean, he's such an awesome figure. I mean, talk to me about your conversations with him and maybe something you learned from him.
Well, so I didn't actually get to talk to him because he was, he was doing this thing.
It's hard to talk to him.
Right. So, but, I mean, I can say just off of his professionalism and how he is and how the way that I look at him and what he says and how he breaks things down, like, that's what you want in an analyst, right? You want that because he has the credential. He has the Hall of Fame. He has the Super Bowls. He has all those things, and he's a very personable person. He's not a person that, is going to push you to the side, but he's a person that is really personable, and I really think that's really great when you're an analyst.
Now, listen, we have the Super Bowl this week, obviously, and the offensive weapons that are on each of these teams. I mean, you look at a Christian McCaffrey for the 49ers. He can just do so much. So when you look at a guy like him or even a top guy like Travis Kelce on the Chiefs, as a linebacker, just what are you looking for when you have guys that are that talented, and how do you try to neutralize them as best you can when they're on the field?
Well, we try to look at tendencies. We try to look at what are they doing that is showing tips for us to beat them, right? Even when you have running backs in the backfield, a lot of running backs before the play, they're looking around trying to find different people that they can scope out, right? And sometimes you can see that on film. So you're looking at little tidbits, little things that you can to really make a better decision while you're out there on the football field. So somebody like Christian McCaffrey, I'll give you an example. Like if he likes running an angle route out of the backfield, right, you should know that from watching film, and you can cut that angle route off and maybe get a pick, right? So those are the things that you can kind of like look at, and I think Christian McCaffrey is amazing, and he's hard to stop. I don't know if y'all remember when he was with Carolina, right? They was calling out the play, and they knew the play.
Yeah.
He still ran the route, and he won. So you can know the play, and he still wins. You know what I mean? So
at that point, what are you supposed to do?
Well, I think you go back to the sideline and you reconvene like, Coach, I did what you asked me to do. You know what I mean?
We knew it was coming, but
we knew it, but sometimes in football that happens, right? Because everybody out there is the best of the best, right? And so if somebody gets the best of you, you have to come back the next play and redo it all over again, and you get the best of him this time. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Well, talk to me a little bit about your foundation. It's what is it? The Circle of M, I believe, is it what it's called? Tell me what it's all about and what you guys are doing.
So my foundation is called the Circle of M. We unmask the feelings that cause anxiety and depression in professional athletes. So my logo is a half helmet, half face, because a lot of athletes, when we are done playing, we don't know how to take the helmet off, right? We still have this helmet on, quote unquote, right? And we need to unmask those things that we're feeling when it comes to football. A lot of times we don't have a identity, so we go through identity crisis because we've been in the game, right? You are in the game, and then next thing you know, you're out of the game, and you don't know what to do with yourself, right? People been cheering you on. We've been getting all this love, and then now you don't have the love anymore. So I've created like a virtual locker room, a healing circle for professional athletes to be able to come in and to be able to dump, put them in the right situation. If they need a therapist, I'm a global ambassador for All Points North, which is in Edwards, Colorado. So I'm basically like a bridge for guys to kind of point them in the right direction when it comes to their mental health, because I'm going to say all, but a lot of players deal with the transition hard. So the next 2 years after you're done, I try to be in that middle to kind of help you navigate.
And it's great seeing how mental health has had a heightened focus in recent years, and you've had a chance to give a good spotlight on the work you do. You've been on CNN 3 times, I believe, discussing this. So just talk about how mental health has been prioritized in the mainstream and just how important it is now that you get to promote the work that you do and your mission on a high level.
I think it's perfect because 2020 was hard for everybody, right? So mental health was brought up in a way that it was kind of was sprung on people. If you think about it, in 2020, you really couldn't do much. And so after that, I really started to continue to do that work. And I was doing the work on social media, and CNN kind of seen my work that I was doing, and they wanted me to come on, right? Because at the height of that, DeMar Hamlin, right, last year, they wanted to understand and know what were the players feeling when they seen DeMar Hamlin on the ground, right? That is a very traumatic experience. So me being in an experienced role, I could be on there to tell them what the experience is and what it looks like. And so that's kind of how the journey started, and that's how, the Circle of M even got it even bigger, because people are looking at it because they're looking for an outlet, right? Stuff like that, when you see stuff like that, it's very hard. It's very hard to keep playing, especially if you have an injury or anything like that. When you have an injury, you don't realize in the game you have the injury, and then you roll the ball up and you keep playing. But it's a traumatic experience for us because we don't have time to process that. So
I think that's why the Hamlin thing was so, for a lot of fans, we got to see more of another angle of that, because when you're sitting on your couch, when you're watching the game, when you see a guy walk off the field, he's being helped, and then you're like, all right, let's keep it going. You don't actually really understand not only what that player's feeling, but what all his teammates are feeling.
Yeah.
Like, that's your brother. That's who you've been spending the whole year with.
Right.
That's a guy that, you've been riding with. And, I just think that to have that better understanding, obviously, the DeMar Hamlin thing was horrific, but the one silver lining is that people are now more aware and understanding of that. And as we move forward, I think that's, something really important.
Yep, very important. I think we're more conscious of guys dealing with that, and I think, even the NFL has 32 clinicians on each team, and I think that's important. Even if the guys don't know there's help, or if they don't want to go in, there at least is there for them.
And I think now more than ever, when you look at social media and how it impacts some of these athletes, I think fans sometimes forget that these are real people, and just the way that things have been conducted on social media, it can really get to some athletes. Just talk about how that's impacted athletes with the rise of social media and really just how everyone can voice their opinion at any point.
Man, from experience, I dealt with it hard. Being a first-round draft pick, especially in Philly, that's a great fan base, very passionate fan base, and I wasn't playing that much in the beginning, and they used to tell me that I wasn't playing that much, and so it was hard. It was hard because I used to look into Twitter and things like that, and that plays on your mental health too as well, because you start to believe the stuff that people say. I'm like, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I need to go somewhere else. Maybe football isn't for me. You really start to think about those things. So even when you're fans out there, and just think about that with football players, remember that we are human too, right? We play a barbaric sport, but because we are in that sport, we've made it to the highest pinnacle that we could possibly get. That's a blessing, but that doesn't mean we don't go through things and we don't struggle too as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned you spent a few years with the Eagles. We're a couple New York guys, so I think one thing I'm wondering is, from the Eagles' perspective, is a game against the Giants or the Cowboys? Which one do you? What's the bigger game? What's the one that you get more excited for? Because we like to think the Eagles are the Giants' rival, but from the Eagles' perspective,
I honestly
be honest.
I honestly think from the Eagles' perspective is the Cowboys.
Yeah,
has to be.
You know what I mean?
I figured, but I had to ask.
But like in Philly, there's a jail cell in Lincoln Financial Field.
It's right there.
They're crazy. Like, they go crazy. Like, if you go too crazy, they'll put you in the jail cell for the rest of the game, right? So, especially going against the Cowboys, like, they want to beat the Cowboys.
Yeah.
The Cowboys, everybody says they're America's best team, right?
Yeah.
And it's like they hate hearing that, the whole year. So they're like, yo, if we beat the Cowboys, come on. That's all I want.
Yeah.
How real is that NFC East rivalry? It just feels like even the Cowboys might be on a different scale, but even when the Giants, Washington, just like everyone just there seems to be that rivalry. Just how is it in those types of games? How real is it?
It's crazy. It's crazy. My first game, it was like a brawl on the sideline. And I was just like, wow, you had Trent Williams, you had T. Cole, right?
Some big dudes.
It's a battle.
They just going at it. T. Cole ran all the way across the field to get with Trent Williams. These are primetime players. So just being in that environment, we play each other twice a year. So it's just a different type of game, right? Because you need those games. You can lose all the rest of your games and win all of your conference games and make it to the playoffs. So we know when we play those division games, we have to win them. So it's really scratching, clawing, like we're doing whatever it takes to win those games.
And then staying on the topic of division, you ended your career with Washington.
Yeah.
What was it like, going back? So you went to Seattle, then back to Washington. You go back to the NFC East. What was it like going back to Philadelphia? Like, what was that experience like?
Man, the experience, I think, for me, was pretty good. I wouldn't say that it was a bad experience for me playing with the Commanders. Well, they were the Redskins at the time. But playing against the Eagles, it was kind of like bittersweet because, I got cut from the Eagles, went to Seattle. But getting to be able to play against them, it was like, wow, like that's where I started. I got to see all my teammates that I used to play with. Unfortunately, we didn't get the W because the Eagles, they're pretty good, right? So, but I would say that it was a great experience, and it was a full circle moment being able to come back on the field.
Well, Marcus, congrats on a really nice career and the great work that you do with the Circle of M. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it, man. I thank you guys for having me.
No, thank you. Appreciate the time.
We'll be back with more one-on-one after the break.
Welcome back to One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. I'm Bridge Gotham, joined by Julia Moss here at Radio Row in Las Vegas. And we're happy to be joined by Jeff Lewis, who's the founder of the American Flag Football League. Jeff, thanks so much for taking the time, and we're so excited to talk to you about flag.
Great to be here. I'm a native New Yorker. I've spent a lot of time in the Bronx, in Arthur Avenue. My dad actually grew up in the Bronx. A lot of friends that have gone to Fordham. And I actually was a DJ at WVBR, the Voice of the Big Red,
Oh, wow.
at Cornell, where a bunch of people emerged into ESPN and other, careers in sports radio and stuff. So I appreciate what you guys are doing. It's really good stuff.
So we were talking before the show, we have a lot in common. I played flag football, Yorkville, Randall's Island growing up. I know you spent a lot of time doing that. And, of course, your vision ultimately, became this American Flag Football League. Just tell me about how it began, how it all started, and where it's sort of grown over the past, was it 7 years now?
Yep. So as you guys know, Randall's Island, in land scarce, New York, where did we play our sports? We have to go looking around for places to play. And as you did, my son played in this Yorkville League on Randall's Island. And it was really interesting. I had a really, in first grade, I went to the tryouts with him. And I remember, and they can't play anything yet, right? When kids are 6, 7 years old, they literally can't play a thing. But they're so excited. And the kids show up for flag football. First of all, they've got gloves on. Mm-hmm. They can't catch, but they've got gloves on. They already have a touchdown dance, choreographed. They can't necessarily make a touchdown, but they're ready in case it happens.
Right.
They're so fired up. And the energy of the kids and the parents and everyone, when you got to flag football when they're first grade, second graders, compared to everything else, was like night and day. And I was like, wow, there's something about this game. And then in third grade, the last play of one of his games where we lost the game was one of the most spectacular things I've ever seen in sports. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to need to see this game played by real athletes, because if 8-year-olds can make it memorable, then what would world-class athletes do? And it was about 5 or 6 years later, that idea was just kind of banging around in my head. Mm-hmm. And 5 or 6 years later, I raised a little bit of money, and we hired Mike Vick, Terrell Owens, Ocho Cinco, a bunch of different people. We had some New York players. We had Nikita Whitlock, who played for the Giants. We had Steve Smith, who played for the Giants. We had Kerry Rhodes, who played for the Jets, you might remember. Kerry Rhodes, by the way, and Steve Smith. Kerry Rhodes was an all-pro defensive back. Steve Smith had 100 catches one season as a receiver. The only thing they both wanted to do when they got a chance to play flag football was play the other way. All they wanted to do was play defense and offense instead of what they normally do, because it's like there's always this rivalry between the receivers and the D-backs. They're always like, I could play your position, I could play your position. And so the cool thing about flag is the best players in flag never leave the field. The best players just stay out there. They play offense, they play defense. They don't go anywhere. And it kind of harkens you back to, your backyard. Think about it. You didn't, sub in the offense when you were playing. You just played offense, and then you played defense.
It's just like Little League Baseball. The pitcher was the best hitter.
Exactly.
That's the way it was.
Exactly.
So it's been about 7 years now. I was wondering, from your perspective, how has the league grown from, year 1 to now year 7?
So when we started it and we looked at all the statistics, flag was about the same size as tackle football in terms of participation. And flag is now about 2 million more players than tackle, because flag's been growing and tackle's been shrinking. Mm-hmm. And if you actually add up ice hockey, lacrosse, and rugby together, flag is almost 2 million more players than those. Wow. And we are about to have a revolution. This really sort of transcends our league and our participation in the sport. We have a men's professional league starting this year, a women's professional league starting next year. And right now, in about half of the population of America, there's varsity girls high school flag. I grew up in Scarsdale, not so far from Fordham, and they've, I think, had 2 seasons now of varsity girls play. But we're probably 1 to 2 years away. I see a guy with a Michigan cap on over there.
Yep.
Those Michigan fans are annoying. But anyway.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere, especially in New York.
Yeah, tell me about it.
But imagine that your daughter can get a scholarship to go to Michigan and play football against Ohio State. Oh, well, imagine.
It's as big as it gets.
Right? I think Daddy's going to walk over to Janie. He's going to take the little soccer ball away, and he's going to say, sweetheart, this is a football. Okay, we're going to learn how to throw and catch this thing. And I think that is probably 1 to 2 years out. That is not 10 years out.
Yeah.
And if you guys are familiar with the math of Title IX and all these issues that you have in collegiate sports, what a dream it is for colleges to have a sport where there's a very large supply of female athletes who are eager to play it, who can play it at a decent enough level to be competitive and make their schools competitive. It's not that easy to find something where you could play 7-on-7 flag and you could have 25 or 30 young women on a team. That's a lot of scholarships, a lot of participation, does a lot for them. But I think that will have literally a transformative effect on our whole society. Because for the first time, girls from the age of 5, 6, 7 years old are going to be like, when are we going to go play football?
Yeah, I can already see that there's so much demand for it. Like my two sisters, they go to an all-girls school in New York, and one of the biggest events of the year is this big flag football game, and they all dress up in pink for breast cancer awareness, and it's so much fun. And my sister scored, like she had like a pick six. I was going to watch the game, and I was like, you know, you can do this not just one day of the year. This is like, you see how much fun they're having. Like, just the amount of growth and the potential there is awesome. But one other thing I wanted to ask you was not just women and girls, but expansion beyond the United States, because I also think that that is the next frontier for football in general. I mean, what is the power of flag to take it overseas, where really that barrier to entry for American tackle football is so much more?
So I'll plug our social. We're at Flag Football. We have a really good Instagram account. We're sort of trying to learn TikTok. If there are any Fordham kids that are great at TikTok, you want to come help us out, that'd be awesome.
We've got
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Yeah. So, but our IG is great, and we have like 135,000 followers on IG. The biggest city in the world for us in terms of followers is Mexico City.
Wow.
There you go. Because that's where they're looking for it, right?
Yep.
If you build it, they will come.
And Mexico is very important. There was the biggest ad on the Super Bowl last year was an ad the NFL put up for NFL flag that featured a woman who plays for the Mexican national team. We've had Mexican teams play in our tournaments. We had a great moment. We had a woman playing for a team of all men in one of our tournaments, and they came from Mexico. And there was this moment where a guy broke away and he's running for a touchdown. And when you're running for a touchdown, I wouldn't know this because I can't run, but the guy's running for a touchdown, and you know how you can feel like somebody's behind you?
Yeah.
So you just got to pick it up.
Yeah.
So the guy feels that presence, you know, and sort of picks it up and gets into the end zone. And then he turns around and he sees the only person who had the heart to actually try to chase him down was the only woman on the team.
Oh, wow.
And they actually had this great moment. They had a hug. It was totally cool. But like, you know, I'll just tell one other thing about the girls and women thing. We did a kids tournament at MetLife Stadium, and they had, you know, kids came from Staten Island. Now, Staten Island has had high school varsity girls flag football for a long time. Mm-hmm. So it's now cultural. And it starts very young. And so there was like a team of like 8U girls from Staten Island. And, man, you would imagine a little attitude, right? They came out on the field. They were chest bumping. They were high-fiving. They had music. They had a boom box. You know, and they started playing. They were throwing sideways, and the whole thing was incredible. But the coolest thing about it was watching the boys watching the girls. Mm-hmm. It was that these girls could feel like they could be aggressive, and the boys weren't going to be like, stop doing that. Boys were like, that's awesome. That's cool. And it's going to be really a transformative thing in terms of the way that men and women, when they grow up, think about each other when they've had those kind of experiences as kids. So we have a pro league starting here next year. We just announced today we're doing a partnership with Brinks TV, which is going to be the official free-to-play platform for us. And Brinks is started by a guy named John Brinkus. You guys might be too young. But John was the sports science guy on ESPN.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Love watching those clips on YouTube,
right.
Yeah.
So John is going to create a lot of content for us and help us create free-to-play, fun stuff to do during the games. He has an amazing platform at Brinks.tv. We're also going to be on Twitch. We're also going to be on YouTube. We're also going to be on our own website, AFFL.com. One of the things that we're really, really stressing is we want our games to be free. We don't want to be behind any paywalls. We want everybody to be able to see it. Because when people see our game, they love it. The numbers we put up on television, on streaming, on social are amazing because basically our game is sort of like if, you know, you guys might not remember the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ad where the chocolate and the peanut butter like mash into each other.
Yep.
Well, our game is basically that same thing where football and basketball mashed into each other.
Yeah.
Because our players look like basketball players. You can see their faces, see their personalities, which is really why we like basketball, because the games don't mean anything. And what we love about football is the action, the balance, the uncertainty, and the meaning. So what if you had a game that's got all of the bones of football, but it allows the players to be as visible and as vibrant as basketball does. That's why people love to watch it.
And I want to bring this over to the financial aspects of
Sure.
it. You touched on it a little bit. Something that's so great about flag football is that, you don't need the hundreds of dollars of equipment just to play the game. All you need is clothes and a flag and a football. So I was wondering if you could
I was a
expand
lacrosse
on
and
that.
hockey dad, so I could talk to
Right.
equipment.
Yeah.
Look, we were talking about this before, right? No offense to soccer, but it's the biggest sport in the world because it's cheap.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because basically most of the world is poor. By the way, if you got any economics majors out there who have not heard the president of Argentina's speech at the Davos World Economic Forum, it might be the best political speech anybody's ever given. One of the things he talked about was what percentage of the world was in poverty over history. And if you think about it today, still most of the world lives in very, very difficult conditions. Soccer is accessible to them, no matter really what. So that's why soccer is the world's game. But when you see, like, the best laboratory for, like, evaluating football's power is watching girls who've been stuck playing soccer play football for the first time. Because I always say they look like your baby does when you give your baby candy for the first time.
Yeah.
And the expression is, what is this? Where can I get more of it? And what reason do you have for keeping it from me for this
Right.
long?
Like, where has it been?
Like,
Where has it been?
what's going on?
Yeah.
But that's the way that girls feel when they play football. The thing about even flag football is it has this cooperative aspect. Everybody on the team has to participate and has to contribute. And so you get on the field and your juices start flowing. You can't relax. When you're playing soccer and the ball's 80 yards down the field, you're standing there looking at butterflies.
Yeah.
You never have that moment in a
Right.
football game. It doesn't happen. It happens in a softball game. It happens in a soccer game. It never, ever, ever happens in a football game, and that's part of why the game is so energizing. We want our games to be super fast. The modern fan has a different kind of a internal clock. So our games are 4 12-minute quarters with running time, and our games will be done about 80, 85 minutes.
Yeah.
Complete game.
That's awesome.
And we'll, if you come to a game, it's a doubleheader, and we'll get 2 games done in less time than it takes, college or NFL to
Versus
play
one football
play
game.
one.
Yeah, that's huge. So I got one more for you. You were talking about how the next 10 years are basically going to be an explosion of flag football. I mean, you see it coming to the Olympics in 28. Talk about sort of the goals for the next 10 years for flag football.
Yeah. So, this is our first year of professional play. We've introduced the professionals. We've played a bunch of tournaments, but we really need the professionals because we need what we kind of introduced was the FA Cup, but we didn't have the Premier League yet. I don't know if you get that.
Yes,
you know,
I
reference.
spent a semester in London, so yeah,
Right. So
familiar.
the FA Cup is so cool because like anybody can kind of win and anybody can
The
climb the
different
ladder
levels, yeah, it's great.
and maybe get on the field with the best in the world. And that was the idea of our tournaments. So we had teams of NFL players and we had teams of guys that had never worn a helmet all together competing. But the hard thing about it as a fan was a one-and-done tournament. They just sort of disappear. So we need to have a structure that looks more like other things. So we're going to have a 16-game season, and you'll get to see the same players and get to know them. I think 10 years from now, we'll probably be in 30-ish cities with both men and women. There will be leagues all around the world playing our style. And I think that women's flag football will be the largest revenue sport for women in the world.
One more question from me. We
Yep.
we have this hat over here that you so graciously let us have. Lucky Sevens, if you can see it, great logo. I was wondering if you could speak more on Vegas's team and why Vegas for a flag
Sure.
football team.
So the first 4 teams are Dallas, Boston, Nashville, and Las Vegas. I think we probably had to pick Las Vegas just because the name is so cool because we
It
play
is.
7-on-7. But basically, here's the thing. If you want to buy a team, we'll put a team in your city because flag football, there are places that are thick with talent.
Mm-hmm.
Florida and Texas particularly, it's like insane, like how many people can play. If you go to a tournament in one of those places, there's NFL guys everywhere getting wasted by people you've never heard of.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like there was a thing in New York back in the day called the Harlem Rucker League basketball,
Yep.
where like Dr. J and all these guys would play against guys from the neighborhood that you never knew who they were, where they came from. And that's what goes on in those places. But the fact is, I could go put a team in Cedar Rapids, and I can find 7 amazing athletes. So we can kind of go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little hesitant with very large markets. Like, I'm a New Yorker. I'd love to have a team in New York. I'm terrified of New York because I think it's so hard to get attention.
So densely sports populated.
And it's also hard to get from one place to another.
Yeah.
So, like, where do I put I need a 8,000 seat stadium. So where am I going to put the team? Right? Where am I going to play? And then if I put it in New Jersey, no one's going to come who's not from New Jersey.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's going to drive from Long Island all the way to New Jersey to play. So it's like we got to find the right venue and sort of almost make it like a neighborhood thing.
Yeah.
But that's the idea. I think we'll have about 30 teams in 10 years, and men and women. And at some point, we'll play some co-ed, too. One of the really cool things about flag is that you can have, there are very few sports where you can have men and women in the arena at the same time, and it doesn't get weird. We played a test co-ed game 2 years ago, and, it was kind of, hits and giggles for most of the game. And then at the end of the game, it was close. Now everybody started to get kind of serious. And there was a guy from one of our best teams who was about to catch the winning touchdown pass in the end zone, and a woman who's about 5'0" goes up to him and just absolutely, and this guy's arms are bigger than my legs, and this woman goes up and just absolutely strips the ball out of this guy.
Wow.
And everyone's like, whoa, what was that? So after the game, I went and talked to her. She was a boxer at Notre Dame.
Wow.
So this girl was an athlete and a half, right? I'm sure that when this guy took his first look at her, he wasn't really worried about her stripping the ball out of his giant arms, but he also didn't know the quick muscles that she had and the strength and whatever, the agility. It was an amazing moment, and moments like that are going to be really cool. So at some point, for sure, I think we'll have co-ed too.
Yeah. Well, I think we're very excited to see how this, how this grows over the next 10 years. But Jeff, thanks again for taking the time. Jeff Lewis, the founder of the American Flag Football League, here on One on One. When we return, we'll have more action here live from Radio Row, Super Bowl 58.
Welcome back to Radio Row here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm Chris Persianen from WFUV Sports. Very lucky right now to be joined not only by one of my favorite tight ends in the NFL, but TikTok superstars. And I think that in a world like today's, it shows a lot about y'all that you have so many people that want to connect with you guys on that level. So,
thank you.
Ju and Chan, thank you guys so much for joining
Thanks
today.
For having us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
How's it been so far on Radio Row? Like, what has your guys' experience been like here?
It's been cool. It's crazy. We're here with Total by Verizon today. We're creating some hype around their Super Bowl commercial. It's really exciting. Obviously, it's a prepaid cellular service as well as internet, super affordable, which is convenient. But they have a really fun Super Bowl commercial on the Univision telecast, so we're excited.
It's going to be dope. Their commercial is going to be like a late 90s Latin music, Suavemente, if you don't know.
I'm half Dominican.
Okay.
That's my song.
Okay, so they're going to do a little
I know it doesn't
around.
look like it.
We're doing a twist on it on our
doing
TikTok.
a twist on it. So
you got to check it out.
Super dope. And also they're offering, free car washes to rideshare drivers. So you can always keep their whip clean while they drive people while they're making some money.
That's what I was going to ask about too, was you guys are doing something else. You guys are putting boots on the ground. There's some action too, and
no doubt.
You're helping out people. And what I love about it is the rideshare drivers, Uber, Lyft, you name it, that you guys are washing the cars of. Like, these are the people that use that prepaid cell plan.
No doubt.
So
exactly.
No doubt.
It's so
no
cool
doubt.
that you guys are
it
bringing
goes
it
hand
full
in
circle
hand.
like that.
Definitely. Definitely. But it's been fun. I'm excited for them to utilize it, but also just it's an opportunity for them, man, because this is a big weekend for everybody, especially rideshare drivers.
Yeah.
So talking about balancing things, right? I feel like that's the key word for you guys as a couple, as a TikTok couple, as an NFL couple, right? You guys have so many hats that you wear.
Definitely.
Just how? How do you do it?
Yeah, honestly, a lot of people ask how.
I know.
But, it's easy when you know how to prioritize things and, when you try to put things into practice. Like, I try to be a great dad, I try to be a great husband and a great football player. And all that it can be tough, but when you try to prioritize things, leaving football for football, leaving your dad life for dad life, and being a husband as a husband, everything can fall into place pretty simply.
I think it's all about compartmentalizing, which we've gotten better at over the years. I think sometimes it's easy when you play a sport to not know how to compartmentalize, but Juwan's so good at it. Like, you're great at football, you're a great dad, great at social media. So it's nice to be able to have all parts of him not just conjoined together and mixing up. Like, he's present wherever he's at.
You told Fox last week that he was better at dealing with it at first than you. What was that like? Did you teach her things, or were you like, yo, just close your eyes, like turn the screen off?
I know.
Yeah, it's tough because I know, for her, that's her job.
Yeah.
And it's kind of tough to be like, oh, I'm trying to get as much content as I can. I'm trying to film everything, but sometimes everything isn't made for the internet, and that's just simply what it is. And sometimes you're gonna miss the moment, and that's fine, because there'll be another opportunities for that to come through.
We try to be present. I feel like as we've gotten bigger in this world, I've noticed there's people who, pull out their phone 24/7 and they're not present. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to, stay present and enjoy the process. And I just think it's cool to just enjoy. So that's the goal for us.
What the ladies would say. What they say, let your hair down. That's what we're doing. Just let our hair down a little bit. That's all.
Y'all got some other helpers, too, that you've talked about that help you out with keeping your stress in check.
Yeah.
There's some furry friends of yours.
Oh, my God.
Talk to me about the pups.
Definitely.
So we got to hear it, because my little guy is 11 pounds, but he knocks out all my stress like he's 40 and he can run it over.
No doubt. Yeah, we love our dogs, man. I mean, they've been so freaking good for us, man. We have our little dog, our French bulldog that we got in 2020. Named Hendrix, and we have our I don't even know what you call him. He's adopted,
shelter,
but I mean he's like
we don't know exactly.
We don't know what he is exactly.
They told us that he was a Chihuahua Terrier mix, which totally could be true. However, he definitely is a full-on terrier if that's the case, because he's about 60 pounds.
He's about 60 pounds.
It's like that mystery
much
flavor
like
Airhead. You know you like it. You don't really know what you're working with, but you know it's part of your family.
He's the better dog of the two, though. I always say shelter
sweet.
Dogs are the way to go because they're way nicer.
They're so sweet. They're so sweet, and they just they seek love, and like when they have love that they're getting,
they love
back
so
hard. Yeah.
Juwan, I want to talk to you now a little bit about the gridiron on the field, and I want to start with what I think is your most defining characteristic or trait on the field, which is your versatility.
Yeah.
I feel like what you do spreads the world of 2 positions at least.
Yeah.
Actually 3, right? 'Cause I forgot. Oh, well, you blocked too. So 3 positions at minimum.
No doubt.
Right? I was talking to Vincent Lake from the Los Angeles Rams yesterday, and, you know, online it'll say he's a safety, but he doesn't agree,
That's
right?
true.
He's nickel, dime.
That's true. That's true.
What's it like being versatile in the NFL, being able to play multiple positions?
Yeah, well, you got to be, man. If you want to stick, if you want to hang around, you got to be versatile. And so knowing that I even came from receiver to play tight end, I already had the aspect of running routes pretty well and catching them pretty well. So learning how to block just kind of added on to what I could do. And also just knowing that, hey, I can pass block too now. I can run block too. You know, it's just adding certain things just to add more to your repertoire, and that's something that I tried to do.
How hard was learning how to block? Was that harder than learning how to catch? I feel like
it's tough. Like, it's a whole technique. Like, I had no idea. Like, every receiver, I'm just like, I'm about to just put hands on this little dude and just move him around. But you can't do that when somebody's bigger than you. Like, I know Cam Jordan's floating around here somewhere, but the thing is, like, it was so tough blocking him at first. I'm like, bro, it is tough to do this. But the thing is, if you have technique, I mean, it's still tough to block. Don't get me wrong. He's a Hall of Famer by any means. But, you know, it's still tough to, you know, get my hands on him. But I know I have technique with it that can help me out.
You feel like when you're either, you know, some guys block low, some guys – They leave their chest exposed, and they were just like Myles Garrett, like he just likes to swim and come at you. Like,
no doubt.
When you're in that split moment, right? When you see a Sue or a Garrett, someone hit that swim move, and they're heading full speed at your cue.
Doubt.
What's that like in that moment? How do you keep yourself grounded and go try to, like, you know, whether it's pulling, whatever it is you're doing, go get that job done?
No doubt. I just try to go as hard as I can. Shannon knows more than anything that I just try to go as hard as I can. I give as much effort as I can. Because the one thing about me that you will see from any other game is that I play through the last whistle. That's always been me. That's how I am.
I got to say, when it comes to touchdown celebrations, do y'all collaborate on those?
He doesn't do them. It's very frustrating. He just walks off the field like nothing just happened.
I walk off the field like I've been there. I'm just like, I've been here. Here's that ball, ref. And I walk off the field and celebrate my teammate. She wanted me to have a whole dance, you know, he wanted me to have a whole dance and she
That's
could
him, though.
put out.
Every way, so I'm not mad at it. I know how you are.
Any sign you have? Like, I don't know, like a first down or touchdown, you're like, hey, Shan,
I don't even do the first down, really. I'm just like, all right, I am so on the football field.
Done.
I am a whole different person. And I can't help it because the thing is, like, I'm just so out of it.
It's
and the
so
thing
scary.
is, like, even our manager, her name is Haley Cohen. Like, she was at one of the games. She was like, I was so afraid to talk to you, even though I know you. I was like, I know, like, because I don't even know me. Like, when I'm on the field, it's just a whole different person.
So let's zoom in there a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Let's expand on that. What is there a switch that flips? Do you flip it? Do you feel it flipped? You're like, oh shoot, I'm in that mode now.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, it does. It's just like you just feel it. It's sort of like a feeling, and it's really in walkthrough. Like, it's really in, like, not walkthrough, but like pregame. Pregame, you get in that feel. You got the music going. You got your helmet on. You, like, getting in that zone. And that's when it really turns on. I'm like, man, I am not in the outside world right now. Like, I am totally zoned in and locked in.
I got a question for the both of y'all that relates to the balance thing we were talking about earlier. Are those moments that you were talking about that aren't for the internet, like when the phone's down, when you guys are just resting, are those, like, the best times? Is that, like, when y'all feel y'all-selves?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It is really nice. We do try to wind down, especially now we have a daughter. We really do take a lot of time alone with her. It's important.
Yeah.
And we don't want her to be, I don't know, an internet child.
Right.
Like, we want to have, like, actual, like, let her go see the grass and the trees, you know?
But it's interesting, man. I mean, those are really intimate and special moments, and I feel like that's something that we can really appreciate. We can really appreciate intimate and moments like that because we're always on the phone. We're always on stuff like that. We put our phones down. We really, like, are able to really enjoy, like, all right, this is our time to just embrace, enjoy, and just decompress.
Well, that's the world today, right? Is being on the phone, always
Right.
swiping, scrolling
That's
something,
true.
you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's a good place to leave off. I know y'all
Absolutely.
are super busy, but
Oh, man, we
just
appreciate
the
you.
balance in that conversation alone, I feel like
Absolutely.
is so encompassing of how versatile you both are,
Absolutely.
what you both bring to the table in terms of intelligence, experience, like
Appreciate
y'all
that, man.
are a power couple, man.
Absolutely.
So thanks
I
for taking the
appreciate
time
that, man.
to
Appreciate
come
you.
on, Shannon.
Absolutely.
So nice to meet you
Nice
today,
to meet
Juwan
you.
Johnson of the
Absolutely,
New
man.
Orleans Saints.
Appreciate
Thanks for
you,
taking the
dog.
time.
Thank you.
From Las Vegas, Nevada's Radio Row, I'm Chris Persianen here. Stay tuned to One on One. We'll be right back with you after this break. Welcome back, everybody, to Super Bowl Radio Row here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm Chris Persianen, alongside Julia Moss from WFUV Sports, and we're very lucky right now to be joined by one of my favorite young running backs in the NFL, Chase Brown. Cincinnati Bengal. It was a big rookie season for you. I feel like the end of the year, a lot of things started coalescing. What was that like over the course of the season?
Yeah, I mean, just trusting the process. Adjusting to the NFL isn't easy. I mean, number one, you got a playbook that you got to memorize and know like the back of your hand, and then it's executing on game day and just making the most of your opportunities, because one opportunity turns into two, turns into four, and four turns into, so much more. So you just getting used to that and adjusting.
And you're repping it right now, but you're with the charity Rebuilding Together. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more on that foundation.
Yeah, for sure. So I had a cool opportunity this morning to work with Rebuilding Together and Lowe's, and their main focus is to revitalize communities, and they just happen to be in Las Vegas this week. And they're working on 6 homes and a YMCA to revitalize and just make a safer place. And what's different about their mission is they're trying to get people to stay and age in their homes rather than rebuilding, separate housing that they can move into. It's, they get to stay where they are. And that hits home with me because as a kid I was moving around with my brother all the time. And, just thinking, hey, like, you can stay in one space and know the community you're in and grow with them. That's the most important thing. So.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's great that you're spending time, boots on the ground out here working.
No doubt.
And,
I got a little dirt. Did my hand in the dirt a little bit and had some fun.
Well, Brian Callahan is someone who had a thing or two to say about you recently, and I wanted to talk to you about it and just talk about what that's meant. So he says you've shown the ability to be explosive, that we know, but the potential to be a big contributor to the offense next year, particularly after a full offseason where your focus is like learning the offense and you're rolling it. And so could you talk about what he means by that? Like, what does that focus look like for you this offseason?
No doubt. For me, I just want to be a bigger threat in the pass game. I think my explosive ability and my ability to get in and out of cuts is something that I relied on throughout my rookie career, but just building on that. So that would be a focus on me, just being a threat in the pass game. But it's different when a coordinator game plans, with the intent to use you a lot more. So that was kind of, I think, where he was going with that. But obviously, he parted ways with the Bengals, and he's with the Titans now. So it's a great opportunity for him. I'm really happy for him.
I'm from Tennessee, so I'm certainly excited to see how that goes.
No, they got a great man and coach. So excited for him.
You mentioned your brother earlier, also a great football player in his own right. I was wondering, what that was like growing up and, playing football together, things of that nature.
Constant competition.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to describe it. Always trying to outdo each other. He's going through it a little bit right now with a knee injury and kind of learning about that whole experience through him. I mean, you don't really realize how traumatic an ACL injury is or the surgery in general, because they're hammering and drilling. And I mean, I don't know what goes on. I'm not a doctor, but it's been a lot for him. So definitely commend him for everything he's been through.
Chase, one last question for you. You scored a 54-yard touchdown.
Need a lot more of those. More of those.
I got to ask, with that feeling, so 11 yards per reception, not too shabby either, right? What's the better feeling? A big catch for a first down where it's like you did your thing in the pass game, you ran your route, QB found you, first down, or one of those home runs?
Home run, man. That's an addicting feeling. Any explosive play is an addicting feeling, and just knowing that you did your job to the best of the ability and put the team in a better spot to score points. It's addicting. So I want a lot more of that. There's going to be a lot more of that, and I'm looking forward to next season.
Well, Chase, you've had a huge opportunity here at Radio Row to be here. After your first season, establish your own personal brand and get your own self going a little bit. I know you've done a lot of talking today, and you're excited to get some rest, so we're going to let you go ahead and do that.
Thanks for having me, guys. Seriously, thank you.
So much for taking the time. Chase Brown, rookie running back from the Cincinnati Bengals, took the time to come on one-on-one here on WFUV Sports and chop it up with us. We're so excited to have him on and get his insight. If you're enjoying from home, thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned with us here from Nevada. We'll be right back after this.
Welcome back to One on One from Radio Row here in Las Vegas ahead of Super Bowl 58. I'm Brian Raybacks, joined by Chris Persianen and Julia Moss, continuing our coverage here for the Super Bowl from Radio Row. And when you look at these two teams and you look at the quarterback matchup, Patrick Mahomes, we know what he is. He's at the Super Bowl for the 4th time now, looking for his 3rd ring. But on the other end, we have Brock Purdy. And this whole season, Brock Purdy has been a hot topic of conversation. And his story is pretty remarkable before we get into any of that. I mean, you just look at the last pick in the draft, as that's been mentioned heavily throughout his career, and then getting a chance last year with injuries to Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. And then he really just took the job and ran with it. And his growth during that time span, Chris, has just been incredible.
Yeah, well, Kyle Shanahan was talking this week about how he kind of had to have a bit of an awkward conversation with their front office. And he was like, hey, I'm going to be straight up with you guys. The best quarterback on this team is the 3rd stringer. That's a weird position to be in, right? You're trying to flip around an entire locker room. And that's not easy to do, but the 49ers had to do it, right? And I think a big factor of that comes from something Brian and I were talking about on our 49ers, media availability recap over on our YouTube channel, which is that, Deebo Samuel was telling reporters yesterday, this is probably the last year that this configuration of this 49ers team gets a run at it as a group. And so the fact that they made it to the Super Bowl, the job is done besides getting the job done. And that's what Kyle Shanahan is kind of almost close to facing criticism for not being able to do, is getting to the big stage, never winning on it. Brock Purdy, is he going to be the guy that helps Shanahan do it? It almost adds up, right? You've got Mahomes, you've got guys who can break a play, can break football. We were talking with the Stay Hot pod guys yesterday, and Theo Ash was telling us that what Mahomes does, on a play-to-play basis, what the Chiefs do on a play-to-play basis, fundamentally is just outside of the rules of football. That's not football. It's Kansas City Chiefs football. That's why they're so good. Well, the 49ers are kind of almost super built around Shanahan football now. Purdy just goes in there, makes the throws, gets the job done. And that demeanor he brings to the table calms his teammates down, too, because they know he's never going to be too high or too low. He's just going to be Brock, getting the job done. It's been really interesting this week, guys, to talk to these San Francisco 49ers players and coaches, get a sense of I don't want to say an unlikely source of leadership, because the quarterback is always the leader, right? But because it's Brock Purdy, it's a little unlikely. Last pick in the draft, 3rd stringer, now one of this team's cornerstones in terms of a mental, psychological standpoint. They lean on him.
Yeah, I mean, the ascension of Brock Purdy has been nothing short of incredible. It's just a really cool story, and I feel like sometimes the story gets kind of lost because of how good the 49ers are. We forget that Brock Purdy, last pick in the NFL draft, won the job last year as a 3rd-string quarterback and is now in a Super Bowl. Almost went to a Super Bowl last season if he didn't tear a muscle in his elbow. But, Brian, we were talking about this, something that Brock Purdy said in the press conference a couple days ago, was that his first game, he was a little overwhelmed. He said things went a little quick, and he just didn't play his best football because it was his first NFL action and he got put in during a blowout. It's tough in that regard, but ever since then, he has just been absolutely incredible last season and this season. So just watching the ascension of his career so far has been really, really cool. And Chris, you mentioned a really good point about this might be the last time this group gets the chance to win the Super Bowl. And you look at the weapons on this team, it's very clear that it's not sustainable to keep this many great players on roster. There's only so much money to go around. It's a lot of money because it's the NFL, but with that, a lot of good players want a lot of money. And, when you look at next season, it's very unlikely that this is going to be the same group of talent that is going to stay on this 49ers team.
Oh, but Brock Purdy, now in his 2nd year, has a chance to really take the reins of this team if he hasn't already. And you mentioned the first game action that he faced in the NFL. I mean, coincidentally, that was against the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's kind of a whole full circle moment where now he gets a chance to really right that wrong, per se. He said yesterday that everything was moving really fast, and he was trying to be Superman on every play. And really, since the 2022 season went along, he did a really much better job, he said, of just staying composed in the pocket, going through his reads, and just taking checkdowns when he needs to. And when you have a team that's built like this, where you have a McCaffrey where you can go to him in the flat, you can do a short crosser to Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel. There's just so many ways that they can do this. And by the way, if you want to go deep and just throw a go route to Brandon Ayuk, you can. And there's also George Kittle. There's just everywhere you look, Brock Purdy seems to be set up for success. But when you talk to his teammates and just listen to what they feel about Brock Purdy, they think he's superbly talented. So you can say last pick of the draft, and obviously the talent around him is apparent, but the teammates believe in him, and that's, I think, what's really important. He's really gone from third stringer, probably never going to see the field, to now having this team ready to go for a Super Bowl in 2 days.
And he's gotten high praise recently. I mean, just yesterday, Perry High School, where he went to high school, renamed the street that they're on. It was called Perry Puma Drive, Perry High School. Now it's Brock Purdy Way. So that's pretty cool. But I think the two actual, legitimate cosigns recently, besides the street name, have been Drew Brees. He told Jim Rome that on CBS Sports that Purdy is the perfect orchestrator for the Niners offense. And that's kind of what I was trying to get at earlier, guys, was this San Francisco 49ers offense is so chock full of talent. They have two number one wide receivers in Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. And both of them told me yesterday they are number one receivers. So that is that's one aspect, right? Then there's Christian McCaffrey. And you've got Trent Williams blocking for them all. Like, this team is chock full of superstar power. Brock, it just needs to conduct the orchestra. He doesn't need to be up there playing trombone and conducting at he's just got to do the job. And I think that Drew Brees is right. He is kind of built for that. The other one was C.J. Stroud, kind of to the same effect, talking about how it's not all just about the throw, not all just about the arm. And C.J. Stroud was talking about how he's not rocking with the disrespect for Brock Purdy because he has all those other factors of being a quarterback that are conducive to being great.
Yeah, and you were talking about the 49ers offense, how, just about every position has like a first, an all-star caliber player. We didn't even talk about George Kittle in that list. Like, this 49ers offense is just ridiculous, and the defense is amazing too. This is just a juggernaut of a team, and I think because of how good the team is, that's why Brock Purdy sometimes gets labeled as a system quarterback, because he doesn't have to make incredible, he makes incredible throws, but when you have receivers that can get open that way, you don't have to make those all too often. But it's a bit unfair because, just because his receivers are good, you still need a competent quarterback to be able to make those throws. There's still NFL defenses guarding those players. And while, the wide receivers are good, so they're probably getting open more often than not compared to other receivers, you still have to be a pretty dang good quarterback to hit those receivers against defenses at the rate that Brock Purdy has. And when you look at the stats, in attempts, he's 20th in the league in attempts, but he's 5th in passing yards and 3rd in passing touchdowns. He's been able to do a whole lot in the league this season with not that many attempts thrown.
Well, I think this is a good segue into really the debate about Brock Purdy. And he was an MVP finalist, was up there for the award. But I think when you look at him, and you mentioned that, yes, teams as talented as they are, they do need a competent quarterback to be successful. But is that what Brock Purdy is? Is he a step above that? Because you mentioned 20th in the league in pass attempts and also just with yards and passing touchdowns. But there's a lot of yards after catch with this team when you look at Deebo Samuel and a Brandon Ayuk. There's a lot of that goes around, and that's what people kind of point to at Brock Purdy. Is he just benefiting off of that, or is there something he's doing that puts him in a top 10, top 12 conversation, even higher than that maybe?
I think it's both. I don't think you have to run from either side of the discussion. I think you'll only ever find truth and balance when you acknowledge both, right? Brock Purdy's job is one of the easier jobs in the NFL, okay? Let's start with that. He has the best talent. He has the best line. It's a monster show out there. And the thing with him is that realistically, his coach is one of the better play callers who makes things really easy for him. But here's the reality of the other side of the situation, y'all. You've got to be able to make the throws. Like, being able to make the throws is one part of the job. You've also got to be able to lead the locker room. You've got to, like, the quarterback is not just an on-the-field job. Lots of positions, right? Like kicker, I would say linebacker, but when you're not one of like the lead, inside linebackers, you're maybe like a box safeties. There's different positions where you can get away with just being really good and not being a leader. You have no chance if you're a quarterback that's not a leader. You can be really talented. If your guys don't have faith in you, you're cooked. And so for Brock Purdy, right, something you have to realize is that all those receivers are very aware that there are more talented quarterbacks out there. All of those receivers are very aware they have to work really hard to make Brock's job easy, because the second that, look at how Kansas City beat Baltimore. They let the Ravens beat themselves. And the second Brock gets a little too amped up and he thinks he sees a window and he's going to – and interception, 98-yard return, Super Bowl over in the second quarter. Like, these things can happen quick, okay? For Purdy, it's about the fact that he gets the job done, okay? I think we've underrated that saying in sports nowadays. Getting the job done is good. That's not supposed to be bland. Jalen Brunson gets the job done, okay? He's not going to dunk on you. He did just make the All-Star game, right? Like, there's all around the sporting world, I think getting the job done is underrated because it means you're actually getting it done. Now, the Niners have one more job to get done. It's one that, like we were saying earlier, they kind of need to break through and get through because this is, as a core, kind of their last run. But Purdy, to me, stands out as someone that I don't know if he'll lead them to a Super Bowl. I don't know if he'll win Super Bowl MVP. I don't know that the San Francisco 49ers are going to win this game, but I will tell you that I think he's the quarterback for this team if the fit is too good. And that's something that you have to acknowledge. You can't underrate how good the fit is with Brock Purdy and the rest of this San Francisco 49ers team. They all are willing to lean on him.
But that's kind of what I kind of struggle with, where he's a great fit and he does really nicely in his offense, but when people try to categorize him as a top 10 quarterback, that's kind of where I push back. And also, like this year, if you look at his performances against strong defenses, they've been a little shaky. At Cleveland, 12 of 27, completing less than 50% of his passes. And then the infamous Christmas night game against the Baltimore Ravens, he threw 4 interceptions. And he admitted on Wednesday that, he wasn't playing his best football that night, just kind of wasn't seeing what the defense was giving him and tried to force a lot of throws. And we haven't seen that much in Brock Purdy. But when good defenses put themselves in that position, it kind of makes Brock Purdy's job a lot harder. And you best believe that's what the Kansas City Chiefs are going to do on Sunday. I mean, their secondary has been really strong. They can really tackle as a football team. And you always have to watch out for Chris Jones getting into the backfield. So it's a big challenge, and the question is just whether Brock Purdy's up for it. But if he wins on Sunday, he silences all those doubters and all of those concerns that people have with him at that position, I would say.
I think I go back and forth on the debate whether or not Brock Purdy is a top 10 quarterback. But let me start with why I think there is a conversation for that. Mm-hmm. It might be a bit of a traditionalist point of view, but I think it just depends on what you view the skills and attributes are of a good quarterback. Because for me, a good quarterback wins games. That's a huge aspect of it. Is he passing for 400 yards a game? No. But he's winning football games. That's your job as a quarterback, is to put your team in a position to win. And the 49ers have done that. And the other aspect of it is you look at all the other teams in the NFL. There are a lot of teams that have a lot of good options. And a lot of good quarterbacks. Those quarterbacks aren't getting their team to the Super Bowl. Every player on both teams will say it. Getting to the Super Bowl is incredibly hard. It doesn't matter what team you have. There's a reason that players go 12, 13 years in between Super Bowls. Tom Brady went, 10 years?
Over 10 years, yeah.
Between Super Bowls. And he was what people consider the greatest quarterback of all time. Brock Purdy's in year 2, and he's taking his team to the Super Bowl. Almost took his team to the Super Bowl last season. So are his stats jumping off the page? No. But there are a lot of good quarterbacks whose stats do jump off the page that have comparable options. Not better options, but comparable. but they can't win that big game. You look at Josh Allen, you look at Lamar Jackson, players like that aren't in the Super Bowl this year.
That AFC is a dogfight, though.
It's so hard.
Is Brock Purdy getting the Super Bowl if he plays in the AFC? I'm not sure. I mean, look at the way the NFC was stacked up this year. You had Dallas as the 2, a Lions team that had never gotten there before.
You probably have a Niners. If the Niners are in the AFC, it's Niners Chiefs in the conference game. Like that,
most likely,
those two
yes.
teams would have. The
well,
Niners
I guess we might find out.
The Niners are so strong as a team. But the thing is, and we were talking with the Stay Hot guys about this, like Mahomes and Kelsey, I feel like stand out as the duo for Kansas City because they break that mold of how football works, and that's just the thing with this matchup, guys. Like. It's the completely outside of the mold quarterback, the guy who's doing stuff, throwing to the tight end before anyone else. And then on the other side, it's the almost like sometimes too traditional quarterback. Like maybe he could rush a little more. Maybe, maybe they could go back to running a bit more of that Shanahan offense that they've almost moved away from recently, and trying to keep things simple for Purdy and the offense. I'm really curious to see how this goes, but, Brian, to your point about the AFC, I don't know if we can doubt that San Francisco would have ran through it because the defense is so ridiculous. Like, I think the way they play defense says a lot about how they view themselves. They always have 4 linebackers down, and that means they're really freaking confident in their front that they're setting and the edge that they're setting. Like, they know they have a top-grade line. But the Chiefs have a top-grade interior offensive line, so I'm really excited to see, the two go at it. I just think the Niners are the Niners. Like them and the Eagles were determined as like the top class of the league before the season even started, and that was for a reason.
Patrick Mahomes has not faced Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy hasn't had to face him, so there's a lot of uncertainty. We're entering uncharted waters here. But listen, if Brock Purdy ends up throwing for 300 yards, throws 3 touchdowns, and wins this Super Bowl, I think it's going to put an end to these kind of discussions. But he's got a lot to prove. He's got a lot more to prove than Mahomes does in the Super Bowl. That's for sure.
Oh, certainly. I mean, you guys were talking earlier about how many times Mahomes has been to the Super Bowl. It's like, he kind of rolls out of bed and just does Super Bowl media week every year. It's a thing. With Purdy, there's almost such a question. Like, I feel like it's got to be really tough to be here at Super Bowl media week as your team's starting quarterback and have all the debate about you be like, how good is he? Is he actually that good? But I do understand, as we were saying earlier, where that all comes from. I just think that balance is where the truth lies, is in the middle. I think people who think he's a system quarterback probably have to admit more than they'd like that he's a talented guy. I also think people who think he'd be putting up his numbers anywhere have to admit that there's no other team in the NFL that looks like the Niners from an offensive talent standpoint.
I've definitely, as the season's gone on, especially this playoffs, I've gotten a little more receptive to Brock Purdy than I was at the start of the season.
He hooks you in a little.
He does, doesn't he?
They prance and dance down the field in the run game, and you're like, oh, look at this guy, Brock Purdy, star handoffer, And then he drops a 14-yard dime into a window you didn't think could have ever existed to Brandon Ayuk in the corner of the end zone in a situation that allowed Ayuk to, when he stepped, have 2 feet in bounds and then fall. Like, he places these balls so surgically that it almost just undoes it all the doubt. You're like, oh, okay, that's why they deal with him. Oh, okay, yeah, well, that was an absolute rocket. Yeah, okay, yeah, that'll do it.
I just want to sweeten the pot a little bit about the AFC conversation. I looked up what their record against AFC teams were this season, 2-3. So 3 of those 5 losses were against AFC teams.
Do you have what teams up?
Playing the AFC North and one other team.
I was going to get into that. 3 of those losses were against Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Baltimore, and 2 of those were fringe blowout. They lost to Cincinnati 17-31, and then Baltimore 19-33. They did beat the Steelers, which, whatever. And then they beat Jacksonville, which towards the end of the season when they did play, it was very...
I would argue the 3 teams that they lost to in the AFC, Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Cleveland, I mean...
Those would be the teams they would play in the playoffs.
Those are 2 playoff teams, and Cincinnati probably would have been if Joe Burrow didn't get hurt. So, really, the Niners against the different level of competition that I think exists in the AFC, they haven't exactly met the match for the most part. So that's why I think this matchup against the Chiefs is so interesting. And I think Brock Purdy has a lot to prove still in this game. But he certainly has a chance to do it, and we'll see what he does on Sunday. But that was a lengthy conversation about Purdy, and we'll see what he has in store for on Sunday. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more one-on-one after the break from Radio Row.
Welcome back to One on One. That's New York's longest running sports call-in show. That's Chris Persianen over there repping Las Vegas, the site of Super Bowl 58 on Bridge Gotham. Here at Radio Row, this is day 3. We've been doing a lot of really awesome shows, a lot of different awesome interviews. But Chris, the big game, as we get closer, just 2 days away. And when we're looking at the clock, we're almost to the 48-hour mark, 3:30 local, 6:30 on the Eastern Seaboard, as they say. I want to talk a little bit about the Kansas City Chiefs, more specifically a team that's identity has really been about their offense for this so-called dynasty. But for this year in particular, they've happened to lean on their defense a bit more, haven't they?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you take a look at the DNA of this Chiefs team, and I think more than ever, it's a team that trusts the defense, that can lean on the defense. When you make so many Super Bowl runs, obviously there's going to be, one team where the offense was just the best it's been, and that's probably for Kansas City when they had Tyreek Hill out there with Travis Kelce. For San Francisco, the offense might be better than it's ever been this season, just because Purdy has been such a revelation for them, and we spoke about that in the last segment, Brian Julia and I did. But when it comes to this year's Super Bowl matchup here in Las Vegas, Nevada, Super Bowl 58, as it says on the bottom, I don't even know if y'all can see that, but basically I just think that it's a Chiefs team now that almost rides behind its defense. And I don't want to say that when you think the Kansas City Chiefs, you should be thinking defense, but I will go as far as to say that I think this year's team has forced Patrick Mahomes to rethink his relationship with defense and with punting. He said Monday night to the media that you can flip the field when you punt. And that was something that I've never heard him say before. I've never heard him talk about punting like it was a positive thing, right? To him, that's a failure. But now he understands that he's got guys like L'Jarius Sneed and Chris Jones out there leading that defensive unit, and they're good.
Yeah, they're real good, and that kind of sounds like me and Madden, right? Punt, that's something you can do, or even the old Kobe Bryant saying, or the meme of pass, just get the rebound, right? You didn't even think of the fact that, hey, you can lean on your defense a little bit. You can flip the field there on a punt. And when you look at the statistics on this season, I mean, the Chiefs, their defense only allowing about 14 points a game. That's really, really solid. The offense putting up about 23 points a game, which, compared to previous years, not as high, right? You think about this high-powered offense, and you could say it's a combination of a number of different factors, whether that be new receivers that Patrick Mahomes is working with, perhaps relying more on the ground game, which a bit slower moving the ball vertically. But, a guy like Isaiah Pacheco gets them yards when they need. And in the air, you look at Rashee Rice, who we had a chance to sit down and interview. Chris, you had a great conversation with him. And a lot of the things you learned from him is that, him and Patrick have really been clicking on all cylinders, but it's about understanding each other, understanding their strengths and weaknesses, and Patrick just getting him the ball when it matters, where it matters. And in that regard, their offense has been strong, but they understand that to win a Super Bowl, to win any game, you need to be a complete team. And that defensive effort, it has been stronger. And I think you've looked at a lot of parallels between this matchup and, of course, 4 years ago in Miami. But the Chiefs, I believe, only returning, 2 defensive starters?
2 defensive starters.
So this is a completely different defensive front compared to the last time these two teams faced. And I know a lot of people are calling it a rematch. And, yes, it is a rematch. There are some players that are going to be playing in both Super Bowls. But from the Niners' perspective, this is not the same Chiefs defense they faced down in Miami.
It feels like a completely different team, and I think that's so much because of that, just that trust that the offense has, right? That trust in the defensive unit. The fact that they know they can flip the field, they'll get the ball back. I was talking to Chris Jones about it, and just how he works, has he talked with the offensive side of the ball? Like, what's that relationship like? And he was saying, Pat and I always talk, but we've never really spoken about, trusting each other's units, or the different changes in that. Now this year, I feel like I feel like he's leaning on us. I feel like, maybe he feels like he has to. He didn't say that, but it's happening. And I think you look at the Chiefs offense this year, their best offensive wide receiver, best playmaking wide receiver, Rashee Rice, a rookie, someone who had to develop over the course of the season. You didn't really see a full-strength Chiefs team until the end of the year just because of the fact that Rashee Rice's development was so integral to seeing what this team could do at full strength when it comes to making plays in the middle of the field, because that's what Kansas City does, right? They kind of just run out there and go get open, and Mahomes finds them. Mahomes will find you. It's less about running your perfect route and more about Mahomes finding you. And Rashee Rice has talked about that this week, talking about the first time he ran a different route than he was supposed to, and he got a catch off it.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, Pat and I are locked in now. Like, Pat and I
That's how you
it.
know. When things don't go exactly the way you think they will, maybe you make a wrong turn, when your quarterback still finds you, when it's a broken play, that's how you know you're on the same page. And that's, you kind of have to look. The best teams, look, the helmet catch, that wasn't planned, was it? Talking about the Giants. Look, sometimes the quarterback just knows where to get the ball, even if it's not in the playbook. And, the old adage goes, offense wins games, defense wins championships. Back to your point earlier about how they're leaning on their defense. It is so great to hear from all of the different defensive starters that are going to make such an impact, going to try and make Brock Purdy's life a nightmare on Sunday. And I think there's no better example of the Chiefs' formula for success in 2023 than their AFC Championship win over the Ravens. It was a 17-10 ugly-ish win, right, where the offense made big plays but didn't dominate, and where the defense really showed up when it mattered, and then where the offense made one or two more plays that they needed to. I think that third down play, about 2 minutes left, where if you're Baltimore, you think they're going to run it. Baltimore uses their last timeout. They'll get the ball back, right? But Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs, they drew up a big pass play because they wanted to go for the win, and it worked. It was a big catch for about 30 yards, and that sent them to the Super Bowl. So I think it's all about finding your plays, making the right ones, and the Chiefs certainly know how to do that.
It's just about the synergy. They are greater than the sum of their parts, right? And,
that's right.
And this year, it feels like the sum of their parts is adding up to less than ever offensively. If you want to be blunt about it, this is probably the worst of the four offenses that they've brought to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you right now, it's the best of the four defenses they've brought to the Super Bowl, and that starts in the secondary. That starts with L'Jarius Sneed in the secondary. I don't think they've had a secondary so strong that they've been able to just go ahead and have so many opposing top receivers locked up and in trouble. You see the way Sneed shadows opposing number one wide receivers. He's got such a tough matchup, right? He only had 2 interceptions this past season, and
No, that's a great point. Just 2 interceptions this past season, but yet still knows how to really make an impact on all sides of the field. It depends on where he matches up. I'd love to see who he ends up guarding one-on-one in this Super Bowl, whether it be a Deebo Samuel or a Brandon Ayuk, or, hey, does he move into the center and maybe take on the challenge of a George Kittle? There's just the possibilities are there. And, it's funny. I saw, some reporters were trying to ask Deebo from the Niners side, like, what are you looking at for the Kansas City defense? Like, what are you sort of preparing? What have you seen from them? What are you planning? And Debo's not giving them anything. He's like, that's our game plan, right? I'm not going to tell you anything. You'll see on Sunday. And it's cool to see, all the different preparation that goes into it. And I do have to agree with you. It's the best defense the Chiefs have had in their 4 Super Bowls, and it's the worst offense the Chiefs have had in their 4 Super Bowls. So it's just going to be interesting to see, is the importance of that strong defense, will we see it sort of overcome a Niners offense that is one of the best, if not the best, in the NFL.
Speaking of defense, see Aiden Hutchinson walking by
right
over
there.
there.
That's what happens here at Radio Row. We've had Devin McCourty was over there. Aiden Hutchinson's there. Adoree Jackson. You never know who you're going to see.
Shador Sanders today, too.
You never know who you're going to see here. It is quite something.
Kickball Dad from TikTok was spotted.
Wow.
So lots of star-studded faces here.
Who isn't here?
I want to say, though, about the defense, right? Talking about L'Jarius Sneed. He only had 2 interceptions this past year, but you got to remember he's shadowing the other team's number 1 receiver. They're throwing to him. Those guys are either making the catch or not, right?
Yep.
It's rarely going to come down to Sneed really getting in there and wreaking havoc. But just his presence, the fact that he shadows those top guys and he's so on top of them is so impressive. I think L'Jarius Sneed has been a revelation in the same way that Purdy has been for the other side, in that they have brought an angle to this team that for the 49ers they had before in Garoppolo, but for the Chiefs they have not had since Tyrann Mathieu.
Yeah,
right?
No, seriously. Yeah, the old honey badgers they called him. And I think there's no better example of the importance of the eye test than a L'Jarius Sneed, because, yeah, look at the stat sheet. Like you said, he may not fill it up defensively with these interceptions, but if you watch him, you see him shadowing the number one receiver and doing a damn good job as well. So I think that's a really big factor. And look, that's not going to be news to the San Francisco 49ers, because you know they're doing their homework. You know Kyle Shanahan has them in the film room.
Oh, yeah.
They know all this stuff. But you know what? It's important for us to talk about, because when you watch the game, you want to be able to pick up on those things too, to understand the game plans and really see it.
Bridge, let's just talk ball between the two of us for a second.
Yeah,
here.
let's do it.
You saw the way that Kansas City beat Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
I think it was that Baltimore lost themselves that game.
I would
think
agree.
It was less that Kansas City beat Baltimore. Kansas City played Kansas City football, and that was worth X amount of points.
That's right.
But the Baltimore Ravens kind of fumbled and stumbled over themselves, literally
yes.
at the 1 yard line,
Yes.
fumbled over themselves. And I think that led to them scoring less points because it was outside of their game plan. It was like, you know what I'm saying? So obviously you never plan to mess up, but that's what won the Chiefs the game, was the fact that they didn't force those turnovers necessarily, more so than the Ravens forced themselves into those situations. How do you see this playing out with Brock Purdy? Like, just be honest with me. Do you think that Bridge Gotham? What do you think? Is Brock Purdy going to mess up? Is he gonna get too into the heat of it? Is he gonna let the ball slip and just throw a pick? Is he gonna throw a mallard duck right at L'Jarius Sneed? Like, how do you see this going? Do you think he keeps it to dinks and dunks? What do you see?
Well, you know, the thing is that, like, in the first half against the Lions, you did see a struggling Brock Purdy. You saw a struggling Niners offense, but you also saw their ability to turn it around and fix it. And I like the point that you've made. Look, it's Brock Purdy's second season. He's still new to all this. But one thing that we've seen, especially in the media, is how poised he is and how confident he is and how on top of it he is, and how if you know nothing about him, you wouldn't think that this guy is new to the NFL and new to the San Francisco 49ers organization, relatively new. So with that in mind, I think Purdy's going to play, not a flawless game, but I don't expect to see any quote-unquote rookie mistakes. I do think that it's going to be solid. With regard to the game plan, look, their offense has been a lot of dink and ducks. That's what the San Francisco 49ers offense is.
Dinking and dunking to the best offensive players in the league.
That's what I'm talking about.
Goes pretty well for them.
And you know, you will see a couple of deep balls because you have to switch it up a little bit. And they're going to be conservative deep balls. Those are not the ones you're throwing into double coverage. Lamar Jackson, triple coverage, sorry. I mean, we were just on the topic of the AFC Championship game and how how Baltimore's game plan against Kansas City will compare to what San Francisco's game plan will be against Kansas City. But I absolutely think that their offense, San Francisco's that is, will be just fine. I expect them to just stick to what they know. I don't think they're going to be shocked by the Chiefs. I think it's going to be a very even-matched game. I really do. I mean, I don't know. What do you think about it, Chris?
I don't think Purdy messes up like that either.
No,
I don't think he'll do that. I think
doesn't seem like he would.
But the thing is also, like, the storyline, like, everyone's waiting for it.
Yeah.
I don't think it happens. I think if the Chiefs win this game, it's because they put up a lot of points. I think it's because they had a lot of flawless drives. And that's going to be really hard to do. The 49ers are so good defensively, talent-wise. They are incredible, Bridge. And to me, it comes down to, in this game, I think everything kind of evens out. The Niners' talent, Mahomes, you know, everything evens out except for this. Okay, the Chiefs' interior offensive line, the 49ers' interior defensive line.
Yeah.
It's like Goliath versus Goliath there.
Yes.
Will Isaiah Pacheco be able to run the ball in this game? If he's able to if the Chiefs are able to create holes for him with Joe Thuney being banged up and potentially out for the game, they're going to have a backup lineman. They're going to need Creed Humphrey double teaming Theo Ash, talking to us about it yesterday, about what he thought was going to happen, you know, in response there.
That's right.
What is going to stop Pacheco from being able to benefit off the Niners' fear of Mahomes making plays in the passing game? I think the Niners ultimately have to choose their poison. They have to say, are we going to let Pacheco run on us, or are we going to do our best to stop the Mahomes improvisational maestro moments?
Yes.
You know what they're going to pick to shut out. So can Pacheco run the ball to an extent where the Chiefs can rely on him and lean on him, get to the red zone, and then have Mahomes drop in an 18-yard rocket to Kelsey, bullet pass, whatever it is. That to me is how the Chiefs are going to make their money, is with Pacheco, because I think the Niners are going to commit to trying to shut down the passing game. That's not to say the Niners have a bad run defense, right? But
no, not
look
at
at
all,
what Detroit did to them. They started out the game with great success running the ball against a team that's not committed to being a great run defense. So if you're Mahomes, I actually think you need to lean a little bit, not only on your defense more than ever, but your lead back more than ever. If I'm the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm feeding Isaiah Pacheco up the middle, create those holes, because once he's past those best players, then their whole thing falls apart. You can always attack the perimeter later. I'm trying to start establishing the run up the middle in my openers. Second drive even, go run to the outside. But I want to start out the game, my openers, attacking the middle. Now for the 49ers with Purdy, I think the Chiefs are going to say, all right, if one guy's going to beat us, we're going to let Brock Purdy beat us.
Yeah.
So it's going to be ground and pound. CMC's so great in the receiving game. I think it's going to be dinks and dunks to him, inside zone runs to him, setting up different holes and scenarios for McCaffrey to be able to benefit. It's funny, the conversation in this Super Bowl is so heavily centered, besides Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce,
and besides that,
around the quarterbacks. I actually think the running backs and the defenses are the keys to reading the matchup.
I think the X factor for Kansas City is exactly what you just said. It's all about Isaiah Pacheco, because that San Francisco defense is going to do whatever they can to stop what Patrick Mahomes does through the air. And look, I don't know if this is necessarily a hot take, but I think that Isaiah Pacheco is the reason the Chiefs are where they are. And it may sound extreme, but hear me out. Because of what Mahomes has lost through the air, if they didn't have a back like Pacheco that you could lean on, and he may not be the best back in the league, but he's certainly one of the better backs, a guy that can run downhill, is strong.
Andy Reid describes him as a violent runner.
A guy that you do not, if you see him running towards you, he's essentially a freight train. He's a garbage truck. He's something you want to get out of the way, because if he runs you over, you're goodbye, see you later. And what he brings to the Chiefs is, as you mentioned, Chris, it's another option, something that you can depend on in the backfield, which, let's be honest, in those early Super Bowls, let's think about the first Super Bowl, Chiefs-Niners, Miami, Florida, a month before COVID, 4 years ago. Who was the Chiefs' lead back?
Edwards-Helaire.
It was Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who was, he was all right, but, he was an afterthought in their offense.
A first-round pick.
Yes, but at that point, who just could not. You know what I mean?
He was not changing the way that any defenses felt about what they were going to do.
Absolutely. And because of that, I think Isaiah Pacheco makes the Chiefs offense just so versatile. And the same could be said for the 49ers. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey is such a special player.
Probably
and he's
the best running back in the NFL.
I would say. I mean, I can attest to that. He was on my fantasy team. I mean, that guy was a monster. But, I mean, he will, bring all the attention to him. And so you're going to have to, from a Kansas City perspective, kind of look at what the, you're going to have to look at Brock Purdy and say, all right, I might be okay with him throwing a couple deep balls if it means we stop McCaffrey from picking up 12 yards per run.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Bridge, is like, they got to pick the poison. Who is it that's going to be allowed the opportunity to win the team the game, right? Because we know every offensive weapon on the Niners has the capability to win them the game. Ayuk can win them the game. Debo can win them the game. Kittle can win them the game. McCaffrey can win them the game. Purdy can win them the game.
That's right. He's been using his legs a little bit more, too.
Who are the Kansas City Chiefs going to pick to shut out? Who are they going to pick to try and let beat them? That is the question, because I think it comes down to Purdy. And I think they're going to let Purdy throw. And when you let Purdy throw, you have to be willing to eat the consequences, right? You have to be willing to take a look at what happens as Stephon Gilmore walks in the background. Again, just Radio Row is nuts.
It's like Christmas morning.
You have to be able to understand when they pick that poison. that person suddenly is a Super Bowl MVP candidate. Like, if they're saying, okay, Brandon Ayuk is the guy that's going to torch us today, then you need to be setting Debo up on end arounds and running him up the middle and, like, Debo Samuel for Super Bowl MVP. That's how it's going to go. Okay,
Yeah.
but if it's McCaffrey they shut out, then it's Ayuk. You're throwing deep to Ayuk, and you're throwing deep to Jawan Jennings and these different guys that you have, Ray McLeod. But for the Chiefs, like, Pacheco stands out to me as the guy that's going to be a big factor. We know Kelsey will be a big factor because ultimately when Patrick Mahomes is in a crunch time moment, he trusts Travis Kelsey, and it's really, I think that's
we saw that last week and 2 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago and 3 weeks ago.
It's really that simple. Like, hey, we're in the red zone. I need someone who I can throw a pass at with all my might, who I think is going to catch it no matter what. That's Travis Kelsey for Pat Mahomes. He's really confident in that guy. Those two have a great relationship, and Kelsey, 13 years with the Chiefs, like, that's what he does. So building a resume as one of the greatest tight ends of all time, easy for Travis Kelsey with his mobility at his size, which I think allows him to focus so much more on receiving. Of course, Kelsey Kittle, a big tight end matchup, and we'll get into the weeds on that more here on Radio Row. But Bridge, I just have one more question for you.
Yes, please.
For this segment,
we're going to wrap things up.
It's Chris Jones and it's L'Jarius Sneed for the Kansas City Chiefs defense, right? Chris Jones, the lineman, who's going to be going at Brock Purdy all game long. L'Jarius Sneed, the guy who's going to be trying to intercept Brock Purdy's passes. To you, who's the bigger key?
To me, I think it's Chris Jones. I think getting pressure on the quarterback and making Brock Purdy uncomfortable, because we mentioned Purdy looks comfortable, he looks confident, but again, the things that you can't see are just the facts. He's a young quarterback. He's only been in the league 2 years. Look, make him uncomfortable. He might make a mistake. I'm not saying he will, but he's proven that when he has time, he makes the right throws, and those right throws tend to not be to the defense but to the offense. So obviously, L'Jarius Sneed, very important in terms of what he has to do. But I think in the defensive line, you got to get pressure to Purdy. And the last thing I will say as we wrap up this segment, we've talked about so many different players. I think the real winner is going to be Vegas, and not just because they're hosting the Super Bowl, but from a prop bet perspective, I mean, there could be so many different people to score touchdowns in this Super Bowl. I mean, it's just, that's how, when you look at Kansas City, when you look at San Francisco, you know it's not going to one single guy. It can go to one of many different people, and that's why this Super Bowl is going to be so exciting. But that'll just about do it for our segment. So much fun talking football with you, Chris, and we'll keep it coming. We'll be right back here on One-on-One live from Radio Row in Las Vegas. Welcome back to One on One. That's New York's longest-running sports call-in show, Bridge Gotham. Chris Persianen, Brian Rayback's now joining us. And look, fellas, we're getting toward the tail end of day 3 of one of our live shows, and it's been so much fun. I feel like we've talked about so many different angles of this week, of this game, but one angle that we haven't spent nearly as much time on are the coaches. We talk about the different coaches, whether that be the coordinators or the head coaches, Andy Reid versus Kyle Shanahan, and it's going to be such a fun game from the sidelines. And Chris, I'm going to start with you. You know, what is this game really? Oh, you're welcome.
I'm pumped up about this segment. I love this
on the
coaching
edge
match.
We
of
love
his
it.
seat.
I'll do it.
And we'll start with Kansas City purely because Kansas City did media in the morning and San Francisco did it in the afternoon. So just that's kind of in my mind. That's the order of operations we go through right now. And you know, we heard from Andy Reid. He said a lot of different things. This clearly is far from his first rodeo. So, Chris, take me in to his mindset going into the big game.
Yeah, I think Andy Reid is going, hey, this is my 25th year of coaching in the NFL. I want a nap. But as someone that took the time this week to speak one-on-one with Steve Spagnuolo, one-on-one with Matt Nagy, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, and then also ask Coach Reid a question. I feel like I've been locked in on this Chiefs coaching staff this week, guys, and that's because they're super interesting to me. There's so many storylines around them. Like Eric Bieniemy is just showing up and OCing.
They were talking a lot about Eric Bieniemy.
What is that?
Every single player was like, oh, it was great having EB back. It was great doing this. So even guys that aren't in the room, but have just been there.
So he was just there.
That's the thing is I think Reid used Bieniemy as a gut check for the offense, right? You heard Reid talking about what it was like having him in the building. That guy has a fascinating facial tattoo set up. Radio Row, man. It's Las Vegas,
man.
Radio Row. You see Stephon Gilmore walk by 1 second. You see
I'm glad the camera's turned this
giant
way.
lemon and limes from Starry walking by the next second. I mean, what's next? The UFO? Anyway,
Yes.
you take a look at this coaching matchup. Guys, it's so exciting to me because Bieniemy's been with the team recently. He's been, they even had him install a play. They had Bieniemy come in on the whiteboard and install a play. What is that?
Can they do that?
That's
Is that legal?
They can bring me in to install a play. Anyone can do it. You typically keep it to the people you pay to do it.
Uh-huh.
But Bieniemy now stepping in. Now, what does this mean for Matt Nagy? Do we want to turn into hot gossip row here and be like, are they going to move on and bring Bieniemy back in his role after this? Matt Nagy was talking this week about how he's been talking to the Bears players he used to coach, saying, what did you like about me? What did you not like about me? Getting performance reviews from them so he can be a better coach for these Kansas City Chiefs. And, of course, Steve Spagnuolo knows our neck of the woods very well because he was a very successful coordinator with the New York Giants on his path to becoming the only coordinator in NFL history to have won Super Bowls with different teams doing the same role, which in his case was defensive coordinator. But no one's done it as offensive coordinator. No one's done it as special teams coordinator.
No.
The list is one name long, and it's Steve Spags. This is the sickest coaching matchup of a Super Bowl that I can remember watching. The reason for that on the other side is Shanahan, a play-calling head coach. It's the total opposite vibe. Like, this is awesome, and Steve Wilkes is really, really good at his job. The Niners have a very blunt approach to the defense, which in my opinion is we think our defensive line is so good, we are never going to have our linebackers help them. Linebackers, 1 through 4, are dropping back in coverage. They play 4 down for 4 downs. And it's incredible to watch the chess match play out just in the air. I'm thinking of the meme of the guy like calculating on the whiteboard in the air. Like, that's how I feel like these coaches are working this week. I was talking to Matt Nagy. Hey, do you ever talk with your defense and say to them, hey, did you notice anything in film that I might want to know? Or, do you guys help each other out? He said all the time the offense and defense collaborate. The two sides of the ball meet and go ahead and just try and help each other out. Like, I'm so pumped about this coaching matchup, and I hope it comes across because this is awesome.
It's coming across.
I mean, you can just hear it in your tone and excitement. And really, everyone kind of should be when looking at these coaches. You look at Andy Reid. He's been in the game for so long now in his 25th year, like Chris said earlier. And it's kind of crazy to think that he didn't have that Super Bowl with them until just a couple of years ago in 2019 when he got that first one against the 49ers, lest we forget. But Andy Reid, I mean, people are asking him what changes from your first Super Bowl to in 04 to now this one here in 2024, 20 years later. And he's like, not much. Like, the preparations, a lot of it's the same. You just try to treat it as a game. That's a lot of the narratives and themes that we've heard in the last week, where the media is really crazy the week of, and it's hard not to get caught up in that. But at the end of the day, you're still doing what you've done for 20 weeks a year, which is playing football. So with these coaches, it comes down to how do they get these teams prepared. And the Chiefs obviously have that advantage. They've been here before and have an incredibly talented coaching staff. When you look at Steve Spagnuolo, two-time Super Bowl champion, one with the Giants, and then Matt Nagy. There's a lot of coaches that have been at head coaching positions, but also really strong coordinator positions as well. So this Chiefs staff is just loaded from top to bottom. It, almost like Andy Reid said, it gets a little difficult because with the Chiefs being so good for so long, people want their coaches all the time. So it gets tough. And the same can be said for the Niners too, where Robert Saleh was their defensive coordinator for a long time. Obviously now he has a head coaching job with the Jets. But it's really interesting with the 49ers how they just don't miss a beat ever, where Saleh leaves, then they bring in Steve Wilks, and Steve Wilks just maintains that same level of intensity and passion on defense. So two really strong coaching staffs, and everyone wants to find a way to get these coaches, and deservedly so. They're top-notch in the league.
Well, the thing with the Chiefs, too, is like making it to the Super Bowl so often. Reid was talking about how it actually works out positively for him because their season goes so long. These teams want to finish up their hiring cycle by a certain point, and the Chiefs are usually still in the playoffs. So, like, Steve Spagnuolo hasn't even had a chance to interview for any of these jobs. Why? That guy's game planning every single February.
Doesn't
that
have
guy's
time.
game planning. You look at Raheem Morris, right? The Atlanta Falcons bring him in. A lot of time has gone by since his last opportunity being a head coach, but he's been the DC of the Rams since 2021, now the head coach of the Falcons. And, he made a lot of their fans happy when they asked him what he likes about the offense. And he was like, oh, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. Like, that was like everyone, fantasy football fans everywhere rejoiced. But the thing with the coordinators is that they can't advance in the industry to a next stop because they're game planning. They're in the Super Bowl. They're in the conference championship every single year. So I really love the continuity that these two staffs are bringing to the table. Andy Reid maybe gearing up to bring Bieniemy back, but he also told us this week, he told reporters he doesn't have any spots on his coaching staff. So there's a lot of guys he'd love to add to the staff, but there's no spots right now. I want to kind of pivot a little bit and talk to you guys about Shanahan and what he does offensively. It feels like he's got one of the more influential schemes in the league on both sides of the ball. Eric Armstead, 49ers defensive lineman, was telling me about he watches several teams in the NFL that run the Niners defense because he likes to watch how other teams do it, look for different wrinkles in the system. And he says he watches a lot of Texans because DeMeco Ryan, definitely Niners inspired.
Oh, yeah.
The offensive side of the ball, though, Ben Solak wrote an article about how Shanahan has deterred from the Shanahan offense more than ever. I want to know, do you guys think that that's more personnel-based? Do you guys think that that's more the state of the league, the teams that he's playing against? But I also feel like it could be personnel, too. Like, what do you think? I don't even know if I know what I think at this point.
I think it's personnel-based 100% because when you look at the teams that Kyle Shanahan has coached, this Niners team this season, and then you could say a little bit last season too, I don't think he's ever had this many weapons to work with, right? What made the Shanahan offense so great was kind of the idea that you could plug different guys in, quarterbacks. They had Garoppolo, then they moved on to Purdy, right? But it's this idea that I don't want to call it a system necessarily, but it was a system, right? He had that you can move around different guys and still make it all work.
Well, it was play action, pre-snap motion,
yes.
The wide zone runs. Remember Elijah Mitchell, those wide zone runs?
But it's stuff you can kind of do with everybody. But when you bring in Christian McCaffrey, when you have, you've always had George Kittle, but the emergence of Brandon Ayuk this year, he was a pretty good player last year, but he really came into his own this year. And Deebo Samuel will always be Deebo Samuel. So with this many offensive weapons, yeah, Chris, it makes sense that he's kind of deterred a little bit from what he's most, known for in his offense, because he understands that, hey, if I have all these different weapons to work with, if I'm not using or taking full advantage of them, then what the heck am I doing?
But I think Kyle Shanahan also always deserves a lot of credit with how he game plans and how he's able to adjust based off of personnel, because this guy's a really smart offensive mind. He's been in the game for pretty much his entire life. When you look at his dad and now to him, it's really just been.
Did you see that the last time Christian McCaffrey was at a Super Bowl, it was with his dad?
Yeah.
When he won the Super Bowl, and his dad's head coach was Mike Shanahan.
Yeah, I more so can't believe that. Yeah, McCaffrey hasn't been to a Super Bowl since the Mike Shanahan years.
A full circle moment.
Certainly is, but yeah, when you come from that level of coaching and that tree and that influence, you're going to be superbly talented. It's why the 49ers wanted to snatch up Kyle Shanahan the second that he was going to be available following being the offensive coordinator in Atlanta. They took him right away, and really since he got that job, he has just excelled. And from right when they got him in 2017, they showed promise. And then a couple years later, they're in the Super Bowl, and ever since then, they've just been so consistent.
You did it. You hit on exactly where I wanted to
Nail
go next,
on the head.
which was,
I'm sorry to take the words from
no,
you.
no, you led up to it perfectly. You put the soapbox down, and now I get to step up onto it.
There you go.
Shanahan, what he does for quarterbacks, right? Let's talk about his counterpart in that regard. Two guys who got head coaching jobs in the year 2017 because of their play action, wide zone offenses, and how easy the game can be made for their quarterbacks. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay. Okay? And Sean McVay did it for this guy named Jared Goff, who now plays in guess what kind of offense under Ben Johnson? The Shanahan offense. It's the most influential in the NFL. The thing that I keep coming back to, though, is that Shanahan has gone away from this. He's not doing it anymore. He's running less play action. Dude, Mike Shanahan was the master of the wide zone run. Like, this is a concept older than time itself, but the thing is that Kyle Shanahan made his head coaching career off of these kind of plays, and they don't run them anymore. Like, it's a new look 49ers team, right? This is not the same offense that the Chiefs went up against 4 years ago, not just because the guy under center is different, but because what he's trying to do with the football in his hands is fundamentally different. It's really exciting to me to see how Steve Spagnuolo is going to deal with this, because he himself, like Bridge and I were talking about earlier, has a defense that Patrick Mahomes and the offense are leaning on more than ever. This is not the Super Bowl between the 49ers and Chiefs that the media is hyping it up to be, in the sense where, Mahomes, MVP, Purdy, system quarterback or MVP or both. These are the quarterbacks, and George Kittle and Travis Kelce, and look at the banner over there, right? Purdy, Deebo Samuel, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes. But in my opinion, the most important players in this upcoming Super Bowl, Eric Armstead, Chris Jones, Christian McCaffrey, Isaiah Pacheco, L'Jarius Sneed, the Niners secondary in general, right? These are the position groups that are going to have the spotlight on them, that are going to make the difference.
Yeah.
We know it's going to be war in the trenches. We know Joe Thuney has not practiced all week. His first football action of the week, if it happens, will be the Super Bowl, right? The teams are banged up. It's time to go to war, and I cannot wait to see what these coaches have in store in the game plan.
And for Shanahan, when you go back to it being personnel-based and getting away from the play action, I mean, when you have a guy as dynamic as Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, it's a totally different game plan that you have to be able to establish. When you had Elijah Mitchell back there, yeah, you could fake the handoff and then Garoppolo can drop back, but with the versatility that McCaffrey has, he can be a pass catcher, you can throw him out in the flat, he can catch screen passes. So it's more than just the run that teams can be like, okay, let's guard against the run against McCaffrey. Defenses have to do so much more than just that.
I think it's less about McCaffrey and more about the quarterback. You touched on it with Garoppolo. I think that's it. Garoppolo dropping back. Bingo. He didn't do it. He didn't trust Shanahan. Didn't trust him to do it. But Shanahan trusts Brock Purdy to drop back, not make a flashy pass, not throw for a 60-yard touchdown, but make the right read. And so I think that's why they're running less play action. I think he wants Brock Purdy dropping back and making decisions. He trusts him to do this.
Yeah, I mean, you remember the NFC title game a couple years ago where Jimmy Garoppolo essentially didn't throw the ball at all. I think he threw the ball 9 times, but they just relied on their ground game. And this is a 49ers team that has so many different ways they can beat you. And, yeah, Brock Purdy is similar to Jimmy Garoppolo in some ways, but in other ways he's not, where he can be a lot more dynamic. He's a lot less limited. He can throw the ball over the middle. He can throw a dart. And he gets helped out a lot by his personnel around him, but at the same time, he also still has the talent and the necessary tools to be a good quarterback. So really, it's about catering the offense to not only other personnel, but who's under center, like Chris is saying. And that's, I think, part of the genius of Kyle Shanahan is that he's not trying to just fit everyone into his way of running the offense. He's trying to mix it to his player's strength.
Well, I want to throw it to Bridge in this next regard, right?
Awesome.
Something that has not changed about the 49ers is who they have at fullback. But what has changed is where they're playing him, okay? And I think that kind of is like the answer cheat code to my question I posed earlier. Is it more about personnel? Or Juszczyk is lining up as a tight end more than ever this season, but you know that Shanahan is going to run the ball to Juszczyk. Like, that's what's going on there. And when you have McCaffrey and Juszczyk on the field at the same time, the threat of, is this next play one that I need to stack the box for defensively, is what allows Purdy to get the job done, as we've loved to say this week, is that he can do. So, Bridge, when you're Steve Spagnuolo, right, and you're sending Chris Jones and the dogs at Brock Purdy, do you want him dropping back and making decisions, or do you look at the fact that Shanahan trusts him more than ever to do this, and you almost want them running things outside their comfort zone?
Yeah, I'd go with the latter. I do want them running things outside their comfort zone. And you talk about a guy like Kyle Juszczyk. I mean, he makes this offense so dynamic because he plays a position that's so unique, and it's a position that isn't really commonly played anymore, the fullback position. And the fact that he can line up at tight end and then, get a handoff and be the extra blocker, can take a handoff on the goal line, get you a yard. Like, just the different ways that you can use a fullback. And it's an offense that has a fullback that's in their offense. Like, it's so fascinating to me. And the biggest thing that he does is he takes a little bit of attention away from Christian McCaffrey, and that's exactly what the 49ers want. And like I said before, it just gives them another weapon in their toolbox of weapons, pardon me. And I can't agree more. I just think that he is going to make at least one big play in the Super Bowl. And by big play, that could be getting a 3rd and 1 something. Like
that could be a block
that
opens up a Deebo Samuel.
But he's going to have an impact on at least one major play, aside from the little things that he already does.
Brian, you were saying earlier that Andy Reid said that not much has changed. I'll tell you one thing that has changed. 25 years of head coaching, 1 year ever that Andy Reid does not have, sorry to spoil, a fullback. So if going up against the 49ers, that's a major difference. What do you think that says for the Chiefs? Like, their wrinkle is Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the Chiefs, you know what you're going to get out of them offensively. They're going to rely on Mahomes dropping back, as they should. I mean, when you look at how talented he is, you have to be able to rely on him. But with the Niners, there's just so many different ways that you can be beat. And Kyle Juszczyk, like Bridge was saying, can be an impact player. He caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. So I think that the Niners really have a lot more creativity that they can provide. But that's what I'm always interested in the Super Bowl, where you're seeing Tom Brady go out trying to catch passes. You're seeing Philly specials. So I'm excited to see what these coaches are drawing up. What's Kyle Shanahan going to get going? What are the Chiefs going to be able to provide? I'm really excited.
It would be the play of the year for me if Kyle Juszczyk throws a touchdown to Brock Purdy.
Oh, my God.
That, to me, would absolve any system.
I feel like McCaffrey is more likely to get that. We've seen him throw, but if it's Juszczyk, then that's even crazier. So I'd be with you on that.
That'd be hilarious.
Well, it feels like we've touched on almost every aspect of this game. And, look, it's 1:45 now on the West Coast. I wish this game started at 3:30. I wish this game started an hour and a half.
I wish this game started right now.
I am ready to head. Well, we need time to get over to Allegiant Stadium, but I'm ready.
Center. I'm playing.
I am ready for this game. But fellas, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we got one more segment for you. Stay right here on One on One.
Welcome back. This is the last segment live from Radio Row. Certainly bittersweet, but let's get right into it because we only have 10 minutes left. First thing we're going to talk about, we've been talking about the Super Bowl for 3 days straight now. We've exhausted pretty much every avenue to dissect this game as we possibly can. But the one thing we haven't done yet is give our Super Bowl picks, and we've saved the best for last, if you will. So we're going to go around and say a couple things each. One, who we think is going to win the Super Bowl. If you want to throw in a score prediction, just to throw it out there to see if you can be right, certainly go for it. And two, who we think is for sure going to score a touchdown at some point in the game. Bridge, let's start with you.
Awesome. Well, Super Bowl 58 going to be played this Sunday, February, I believe, the 11th of 2024. The winner of the Super Bowl, that'll be the Kansas City Chiefs by a final score of 27-24. The Super Bowl MVP will be Patrick Mahomes, and I look forward to watching the game on Sunday.
Who's going to score a touchdown?
Great question. Let's go with Isaiah Pacheco to score one on the ground. He is the X factor in this game.
So I'll start touchdown in the actual game. I'm not going to have any shame in this at all. I'm picking Christian McCaffrey.
Boo.
Like, listen, you can boo all you want, but at the same time, you look at him, he's a lock for a touchdown every single game. I mean, against the Packers, he had 2 touchdowns. Against the Lions, he had 2 touchdowns. This guy is incredible in every sense of the word. He is a touchdown machine, so I feel like you'd be making a mistake to
Real
not
hot
pick
take
Christian
over here.
Listen, but if we're trying to have integrity here, like, listen, my reputation's on the line. I want to be right
Good
as
point.
to who catches or who scores a touchdown, and you know what? It can be a receiving, it could be a rushing, and it could be anything. So you know what? I'm going to take Christian McCaffrey. So that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to say that he is let me spice this up a little bit. He'll throw a passing touchdown in the Super Bowl. Love
Christian
it.
McCaffrey will.
Christian McCaffrey will.
Love
there
it.
will be a design play where Christian McCaffrey throws the ball and he'll throw a touchdown. And he'll rush for one as well. So
This became the most popular take to the
there, see,
probably one of the
That's
more
like not impossible.
yeah, see? So I'll pick McCaffrey to have a touchdown, and then winner of the game. I've been flipping back and forth on this so much during the week. I'm going with the Niners. I think the Niners are just so powerful offensively and defensively and just have so much that I think the Chiefs just aren't going to be able to handle it. And I know the Chiefs have been there before, but I just think the Niners, this has been their year the whole entire year. I think Shanahan's going to have a great game plan, and they have that Super Bowl in 2019 in the back of their heads. They want to really right that wrong. So for those reasons, I'm going to pick the San Francisco 49ers.
All right, now we're going to hear from Mr. Chris Persianen himself. What do you got for us, Chris?
Listen, guys, it's been a blast being here this week with y'all. An amazing opportunity. Thanks to FUV for making it happen. Bobby Chaffardini, Julia, you, of course, yourself. I can't believe we're just now talking about our predictions because it means that I didn't mess up and just give mine out earlier. We succeeded in our goal of keeping it for the last segment, so I'm proud of myself for that on a personal note. And then, listen, I'm going to go ahead and defy my own brain, right? So the last time these two teams matched up, I looked at my friend Brian, who was always the kid I talked football with in high school, so very fitting. Another blonde kid named Brian is to my left once again for football talk,
I think
Super
Brian
Bowl
doesn't know
talk.
if he's blonde or not.
It's blonde. Get over yourself. And you take a look at that Super Bowl. I said the Niners are the better team. The Niners should win the game. Patrick Mahomes defies all of that, and he will win the game for the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's literally exactly what happened. Like, they made a documentary about it. Mahomes on the sideline, like, guys, we got to believe in ourselves, and leading them back to that comeback win.
Yeah.
And that's how it went down, right? So it's really easy to say this time that the 49ers are going to go ahead and they're going to be able to break the odds of Mahomes, and they're the odds-on favorites, right? It's not like they're the underdogs here. This isn't some Cinderella story for San Francisco. They're pretty clearly the number one team in the NFL when it comes to balance of team talent. But as Brian said, for that reason, I'm going to need to go ahead and bet one more time on Patrick Mahomes defying those odds on Patrick Mahomes defying what we think we know about football. Because that's the thing about the Kansas City Chiefs. What you think you know about football, they will show you on winning and scoring plays why you are wrong. They have the best defense they've brought to one of these 4 Super Bowls that they've been to. And they're just such a cohesive unit. And part of that comes from the fact that when they're down, when their back's against the wall, they've got a leader, a vocal leader, who they know is the best player on their team, who they definitely think and know is the best player to have ever played in the history of the NFL. The Chiefs probably think that about Mahomes. They think the world of that guy. That's really easy to trust that kind of player. I'm going to go with the Chiefs to win. I'm going to go with them to win by 2 points. I think it comes down to getting in field goal position and Harrison Butker once again saving the day for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Brian, you took the words out of my mouth. You know, the reputation's on the line. When it comes to my touchdown scorer pick, I suppose for score I'll go 28-26 Chiefs. But for touchdown scorer, you got to think about being an NFL quarterback. You're in the red zone. The defense is rushing at you. Eric Armstead coming at you with 270 pounds of fear, right, of human fear. Who do you trust? Who can make a play? It's Patrick Mahomes and it's Travis Kelce. I'm going with Kelce. I'm not even saying Taylor Swift has anything to do with it. No, I don't think there's too much money to pass up. No, because everyone's betting Kelce to score. Vegas would love if Kelce didn't score. But he's going to, because that's who Patrick Mahomes trusts in the end zone, and I think it's that simple.
Well, we only have a couple minutes left here, so I'm going to make this quick. 49ers are going to win the Super Bowl, and it's not going to be particularly close. That's my hot take. I think the final score is going to be somewhere in the ballpark of 28-14, maybe 28-17 if there's some.
Also a bit of a more of a wider margin too.
I think Brock Purdy is going to establish himself why he is an MVP candidate and separate himself from the narrative that surrounded him for so long. And as far as touchdown scorer goes, along the same lines, I think Brock Purdy passes for a touchdown, but that's not the question. I think Brock Purdy is going to rush for a touchdown as well. So it's going to be a Brock Purdy masterclass if you ask me. But that is just about going to do it from Radio Row here in Las Vegas. You can catch us again tomorrow at the same time. We'll be here queuing up the best of the interviews we've had over the last couple days, which really have been quite a lot. So stay tuned for that. But as far as live coverage from Radio Row goes, I'm Julia Moss with Bridge Gotham, Chris Persianen, and Brian Rayback saying thank you so much for listening these past few days. One-on-One is a production of WFUV Sports.